In Jin Young's eyes, the girl standing across from him was nothing but a chunk of stone. And no, he wasn't joking.
Jason's second piece of advice was to never get ahead of himself, even if a girl approached him first to make small talk.
There was absolutely no way to explain this now. Jin Young's brain was working in overdrive, desperately trying to cook up an excuse to smooth things over. A sudden sound echoed down the hallway. It was the sound of a piano. Instantly, the atmosphere shifted. Even Jin Young found it strange. At this hour, the sound seemed to be coming from the music room. Seon-woo was scared out of her mind. This was exactly like the story from earlier. Could a ghost really be playing the piano? Jin Young, ever the rational thinker, was still trying to analyze the situation, thinking maybe some student was secretly practicing. But who would sneak in here in the dead of night? Just then, a dark shadow suddenly appeared at the end of the hallway. Seeing that in the middle of the night would give anyone the chills. Yet Jin Young was still trying to be logical, guessing it might just be a student who hadn't left yet. But that shadow looked way too creepy. Seon-woo completely lost her cool. The ghost story Gui Myung had made up was now swirling frantically in her head. Before they could even react, the shadow suddenly rushed straight toward them. Everything went into pure chaos. Seon-woo screamed and scrambled up the stairs, practically on all fours. Jin Young couldn't even stop her from behind. Meanwhile, Mr. Hang-gyul stood in the hallway, completely speechless. He stammered for a good while, unable to even string a coherent sentence together. Meanwhile, Sun-woo just stood there staring him down. Those two ran faster than rabbits. Was he really that scary looking at night? Cut to the next scene. Jin Young closely chased her all the way up to the rooftop, taking massive strides, terrified that a second's delay would lead to disaster. But the moment he pushed the door open, his heart sank. Seon-woo was slumped on the ground. This was bad. Jin Young rushed over asking what happened. Gasping for breath, Seon-woo complained that the stupid stairs were too hard to climb, and her anemia wasn't helping. Her collapse was purely from physical exhaustion. Still, she couldn't get over it, insisting that the shadow from earlier was way too terrifying. Jin Young could only comfort her, saying it was definitely just a normal person, and that she had just misseen them in the dark. The more Seon-woo thought about it, the angrier she got. She blamed the whole thing on Gui Myung. If that chubby guy hadn't been blabbering about ghost stories, she wouldn't have been scared half to death. But just when they thought they were safe, that eerie piano music started playing again. And this time it was crystal clear, echoing through the silent night. Now even Jin Young was baffled, waiting for his explanation. Looking at the street filled with stone statues, and then looking at the only actual human being standing right in front of him. At this ungodly hour, who on earth would keep playing the piano nonstop? This was clearly meant to keep them on edge. Seeing Seon-woo curled up in fear, Jin Young knew that if they didn't get to the bottom of this, neither of them would be getting a peaceful night's sleep. As Jin Young was trying to figure out how to calm Seon-woo down, a sudden thought popped into his head. Jason was relentlessly egging him on in his mind, saying this was the ultimate chance to get closer to Seon-woo. Think about it. A girl is scared out of her mind, and you're the only guy around. At a moment like this, what she needs most is a shoulder to lean on. But before Jin Young could even process it, Seon-woo had already leaned in on her own, grabbing a tight hold of his clothes. She was curling up like a ball, muttering about how terrifying it was. This was the absolute best opportunity to close the distance. Everything was going perfectly according to plan, but then, out of nowhere, the piano music started playing again. Jin Young suddenly realized, isn't this the suspension bridge effect he read about in books? As long as he stayed by her side in times of danger, her affection for him would skyrocket. But wait, this melody sounded a bit too cheerful. It didn't match the spooky atmosphere at all. Jin Young steeled himself and blurted out his wildest excuse. He said, "Except for you." With this kind of background music playing, any sense of dread completely vanished. And the result was obvious. As Jin Young listened, he actually started to relax. He even went so far as to praise the ghost playing, saying they were playing really well. Seon-woo could only awkwardly agree, but then she noticed something about the rhythm. She pointed out it was a waltz in 3/4 time. Surprised, Jin Young asked how she even knew that. It turned out Seon-woo had taken ballroom dancing classes as a kid. Speaking of which, she dropped a major bombshell. Back in kindergarten, she and Gui Myung were classmates, and they were even paired up as dance partners. Neither of them could stand the other, so they threw tantrums in front of the teacher every single day to get a new partner. Hearing this, Jin Young couldn't help but laugh. He figured that with Gi Ming's hot temper, he must have been the one picking fights. But later on, because Seon-woo preferred drawing, and on top of being a bit anemic, she stopped training in martial arts altogether. Still, she did set the record straight for Gui Ming, insisting that the big guy was actually a natural-born dancer. Instantly, Jin Young pictured Gui Ming's current body shape, and there was just no way to connect him with dancing. The contrast was honestly ridiculous. But Jin Young found the story pretty fascinating. Every other girl in my eyes is no different from a cold, hard stone. The second those words left his mouth, the atmosphere completely shifted. After all, dancing was a world away from his own life. Even though Seon Woo couldn't remember much about her childhood, looking at the vibe right now, a wild idea suddenly popped into her head. Since the ghost had already set up the background music, she reached out her hand, gesturing for him to take it. Before Jin Young could even process what was happening or what she was up to, Seon Woo smiled and urged him to hurry. At this point, Jin Young was totally lost. Like seriously, an impromptu dance in a haunted place. But hey, since his goddess was offering her hand, there was no way he'd back down. His head was already spinning with cheesy, romantic movie scenes, thinking the mood was about to be perfect. Too bad his cool guy act didn't even last 3 seconds. Before they could even take 5 steps, Jin Young's heavy foot landed dead center on Seon Woo's. And let me tell you, he did not step lightly. Seon Woo let out a sharp cry of pain, sending Jin Young into a panicked apology loop. It took her a good while just to stand up straight again. She groaned, saying she was already injured, and this just rubbed salt in the wound. But surprisingly, Seon Woo was pretty cool about it. To anyone listening, that didn't sound like an explanation at all. It was a straight-up confession. Sun Woo was clearly caught off guard. Instead of letting him off the hook, she offered to give him one more shot, telling him to try spinning to the beat. But as it turned out, his coordination was absolutely hopeless. Asking him to spin was basically asking him to trip over his own feet. He took such a massive, clumsy tumble that it was painful to watch. This completely cracked Seon Woo up, and whatever spooky vibe was left vanished instantly. Meanwhile, Jin Young was still stubbornly making excuses, claiming his old injury hadn't fully healed yet. Seon Woo laughed until tears came to her eyes, asking if he wanted to try one more time. But she made sure to lay down the law first. If he dared to step on her foot again, she'd break his leg right then and there. Jin Young immediately whimpered and apologized. Recognizing his hopeless coordination, he decided to play the thick skin card and beg her to teach him hand in hand. He actually looked pretty sincere this time, dropping down to one knee, offering his hand for a dance, and muttering, "Please show me the way." Seon Woo was completely thrown off by his dramatic gesture. But looking at this incredibly clumsy guy, any frustration she had melted away instantly. On the rooftop, under the moonlight, the vibe between them turned soft and intimate. Smiling, Seon Woo gently placed her hand in his. She stood there completely frozen by his sudden outburst. But honestly, Jin Young was just as dumbfounded by what he just said. And just like that, they finally started to dance. But who would have guessed that this romantic background music actually had a terrifying origin? At school, the ghost of the music room, the subject of countless urban legends, always showed up right on schedule every single night. No one knew who was actually playing the piano, but for Gui Ming, this exact melody was his absolute worst nightmare. Yet here they were turning what should have been a creepy, haunting melody into a beautiful soundtrack made just for them. Under the glowing moon, Jin Young and Seon Woo swayed on the rooftop to this bizarrely romantic tune. It was their very first dance together. And even though their steps were still incredibly clumsy, the entire world around them seemed to fall completely silent. By the time they finally made their way down, the tension had completely melted away. Jin Young tentatively asked her if she was still working on her art. Seon Woo nodded, saying she'd never stopped. That got Jin Young super excited, and he sheepishly asked if she could draw him a massive, muscular guy with a full beard. He quickly added that he'd never let her do it for free, promising he'd pay her back big time down the road. What on earth did he just blurt out? He frantically screamed for Jason in his head. Did those incredibly embarrassing words really just come out of his own mouth? Even though Seon Woo found the request incredibly bizarre, she agreed to give it a shot, warning him that portraits weren't really her thing. Looking at her, Jin Young felt a sudden wave of admiration. Seon Woo had always had something she was truly passionate about. But looking at himself, he felt like there was once something he wanted to pursue too. Yet no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't quite put his finger on it. While he was lost in thought, Seon Woo suddenly mentioned she needed to use the restroom, telling him to wait there for a moment. Jin Young instinctively asked if she'd be okay on her own, but she just waved it off, telling him not to worry. She promised she'd be right back. But watching her walk away into the shadows, A strange sense of unease washed over him. That wasn't actually what was bothering him, though. The more he thought about it, the weirder it felt. Just a moment ago, Seon-woo had been absolutely terrified. So how was she suddenly brave enough to walk into a pitch-black, abandoned school building all by herself? Did she seriously just conquer her fears overnight? As Jin-young stood there scratching his head, Jason suddenly popped up again. Staring intensely into the dark, Jason muttered that something was definitely off here. Jin-young immediately pressed him, asking what was wrong. Even Jason, living rent-free in his mind, couldn't bear to listen anymore. This move was practically digging his own grave. Jason looked at him and asked, "Do you remember that suspension bridge effect we talked about earlier?" Of course Jin-young remembered. That was literally his only decent game plan to finally escape the single life. But then Jason dropped a bombshell, a chilling theory that sent shivers down his spine. What if this so-called suspension bridge effect had actually been working on them from the very beginning? Meanwhile, Seon-woo is standing in front of the restroom mirror, casually touching up her lipstick. She doesn't look even slightly scared. In fact, when she thinks about the rumors surrounding the music room ghost, Seon-woo can't help but burst out laughing. As if real ghosts actually exist, she mutters. But honestly, that stomp on her foot from Kyung-young, that actually really hurt. Touched up and ready, she rolls her eyes. That idiot Kyung-young, he actually thought I was terrified. Cut to the legendary music room. The door creaks open, and Mr. Cho Hang-gyo walks right in. He looks at the person inside and sighs. "Do you know what time it is? Pack up and go home already." As it turns out, the mysterious late-night pianist isn't a ghost at all. Hang-gyo calls out to the girl sitting at the piano, Yo-jung, and looking at Sun-woo, she had clearly taken it as a hardcore confession. The emotional damage was real. The girl Yo-jung seems completely lost in thought. She softly mumbles under her breath, asking if she can play just one more song. But Hang-gyo doesn't catch a word, assuming she's just zoning out because she's been practicing piano for way too long. He tells her to hurry up and pack her things. Well, talk about an anticlimax. The infamous school ghost legend was literally just everyone scaring themselves over nothing. While everyone else is busy debating how to win over the entire school, Seon-woo keeps a level head. After all, if you haven't actually been through it, no one can really give you advice. But honestly, compared to all this school gossip, she's currently dealing with a much bigger headache. Earlier, Kyung-young had asked her for a favor, specifically to draw a super buff bearded guy. He even promised he'd pay her back for it later. But the request was so incredibly random and vague, she didn't even know where to start. The more Seon-woo thinks about it, the weirder it seems. She decides to find him and get some answers. But just as she's heading out the door, Yi-won and Soo-bin suddenly block her path. Judging by their sneaky grins, she can tell they're up to no good. Yi-won quickly whips out a phone and shows Seon-woo a video. Turns out Yi-won loves posting videos online. And during their last trip to the snack bar,
Even if she asked if he was free after school to help her study, Jin-young knew better.
Jin-young wanted the ground to swallow him whole. There was absolutely no way he could clean up this mess now. But surprisingly, Sun-woo didn't get mad at all. Sun-woo accidentally photobombed the shot. The video instantly blew up, and the view count has already smashed through 1 million. The comment section is completely flooded with people asking who the gorgeous girl is. Yi-won gets more and more hyped as she speaks, gushing about how everyone is calling Seon-woo beautiful and asking if they're close friends. Talk about riding her coattails. Now that Seon-woo is a viral sensation, Yi-won wastes no time and pitches an idea. She wants to film a proper video together, promising to treat Seon-woo to a massive feast once they start pulling in some serious cash. Seon-woo hesitates at first, but she can't say no to that level of enthusiasm, so she finally nods and agrees. Soon, a brand new day begins. Jason is back at it, feeding Kyung-young another one of his terrible ideas. Today's mission asks Seon-woo out to the snack bar. Kyung-young is practically sweating bullets. I mean, talk about having an obvious motive. But Jason remains completely unfazed, insisting that this is just a warm-up exercise to help him get closer to her. Having made up his mind, Kyung-young has no choice but to brace himself and go for it. But the second he reaches the classroom door, instead she wore this soft, flustered expression. Oh man, this misunderstanding was officially permanent. His legs turn to jelly. As he pushes the door open, a loud commotion erupts inside. Seon-woo is surrounded by a group of girls laughing and talking into a phone camera. By the looks of it, they're in the middle of shooting a video. Seon-woo is playfully teasing the audience, saying her name is a big secret. Kyung-yong is left standing at the entrance, completely frozen, unsure whether to walk in or back away. She looks incredibly busy, so there's probably no way she'd have time to talk to him right now. Seeing Seon-woo so caught up in her own world, Kyung-yong chickened out. He quietly slips out of the classroom, and just like that, the snack bar mission is a total bust. After all, she's the most popular girl in school right now, and she's constantly surrounded by a crowd. Before he knows it, the final bell rings, and Kyung-yong walks home alone, sighing to Jason on his shoulder about how Seon-woo's popularity is on a whole different level. But before he can even finish his sentence, a voice calls out from behind him. "Hey, Kyung-yong!" He turns around and is shocked to see Seon-woo running up to him. She leans in with a playful grin and asks, "Are you talking to yourself again?" Kyung-yong instantly freezes. He can't exactly tell her he's chatting with an alien, can he? So he just swallows hard and awkwardly denies it. Out of nowhere, Sun-woo asks for his name. With his brain still completely fried, Jin-young just blurted it out without thinking. But Seon-woo isn't having it. She drops a friendly verbal jab, instantly breaking through his awkward defenses. And just like that, the two of them are walking side by side again. Seon-woo chuckles and teases, "Don't tell me you made up some imaginary friend, just so you have someone to talk to every day." Kyung-yong scratches his head in embarrassment, thinking to himself, "Imaginary, I wish. There's a literal alien sitting on my shoulder right now." Luckily, Seon-woo doesn't push it. Instead, she casually mentions that she forgot her bus fare today. Hearing this, Kyung-yong realizes his golden opportunity has finally arrived. He immediately pats his chest and proudly declares, "Don't worry, I've got you covered. Let's go together." But just as they're getting into a good rhythm, a loud voice suddenly echoes from behind them, shouting, "Seon-woo!" Looking back, it turned out to be Lee-won and Soo-bin, those two best friends. Just look at how hyped they are. They're probably planning to film another video. Lee-won grabs Seon-woo and wouldn't let go, insisting they make use of this after-school time to shoot another vlog. But before she could even finish her sentence, they finally noticed Jin-young standing right next to him. The atmosphere instantly became awkward. Lee-won and Soo-bin locked eyes, sharing a look that said, "Oh, we get it." Her sudden question completely threw him for a loop. She smiled playfully and asked, "So, were you just trying to flirt with me?" They quickly made up an excuse to slip away, saying they didn't want to be third wheels, though they didn't forget to remind Seon-woo before leaving, to make sure he comes to shoot the video tomorrow. After all, the whole internet is waiting for his update. Watching the two girls walk away, Seon-woo stood frozen, a bitter taste in his mouth. Meanwhile, Lee-won was still whispering to Soo-bin up ahead, saying that since Seon-woo is such a nice guy, he'd never turn down a small favor like this, and they could always buy him spicy rice cakes later to make up for it. To anyone else, it might sound like a compliment, but to Seon-woo, those words felt like heavy, invisible chains. As the two girls walked away, Jin-young couldn't help but feel uneasy. He didn't actually know much about Seon-woo's social circle, only remembering Soo-jung mentioning once that Seon-woo had a great personality and could get along with absolutely anyone. But no matter how he looked at it, something about that exchange felt incredibly off. Jin-young reflexively glanced over at him, and what he saw froze him in his tracks. Seon-woo, who had been smiling warmly just a second ago, now had his head hanging low. He looked completely shrouded in darkness, like a totally different person. Before Jin-young could even register what was happening, who on earth could resist that Jin-young's mind was in absolute chaos? Honestly, Jason had warned him about this when they were younger. Seon-woo let out a long, heavy sigh. Then in a split-second shift, a bright smile instantly flashed back onto his face. He clapped his hands and laughed, shouting, "Ah, Jin-young, I'm such an idiot." Baffled by this sudden, complete turnaround, Jin-young could only stand there in a daze, waiting for an explanation. Seon-woo waved his transit card, claiming he'd gotten things mixed up and had actually topped it up yesterday. He added that he had some other errands to run, so he wouldn't bother Jin-young by walking together today. Before Jin-young could even process this, Seon-woo waved goodbye and ran off without looking back. Staring at his retreating figure, Jin-young stood under the evening glow, a deep sense of unease gnawing at him. That fleeting moment was definitely not his imagination. This uncanny feeling instantly reminded him of Gui-myung. Gui-myung had warned him about this before, saying there was something off about Seon-woo. Looking at it now, Gui-myung was absolutely right. In a situation like that, any normal person would have just laughed it off. But Seon-woo had panicked, rushing his goodbye. He'd told him to treat all girls like stones. But look how that turned out. It was completely useless. The moment she turned around, His entire defense system crumbled, as if he couldn't wait to escape. This was definitely not a normal reaction. Sensing Jin Yong's doubt, Jason's voice carried a hint of testing. Do you plan to dig deeper into this without a second thought? Jin Yong gave a firm nod. If it meant getting closer to Seon Woo, he was willing to take the risk. Hearing this, Jason let out a knowing smirk. Since you've made up your mind, I'll give you your next mission. My next mission. Before Jin Yong could even wrap his head around it, night had completely fallen. Jason's missions always came out of nowhere. He had to pick someone from their circle who was closest to Seon Woo and get some info out of them. Without hesitation, Jin Yong called Soo-jung out to the park. Late at night like this, the surroundings were eerily quiet. Soo-jung arrived dragging her slippers, her usual playful self from the second they met. She asked what he wanted in the middle of the night. When Jin Yong stayed silent, Soo-jung, thinking she was just too irresistible, teased him, giggling. Didn't I tell you before? Don't go falling for me. But Jin Yong was in no mood for jokes. Jason had also specifically warned him never to let his imagination run wild. But unfortunately, he had taken a huge risk to call her out tonight, all to pry the truth about Seon Woo out of her. That second rule had also gone down the drain. With just one look, Sun Woo had completely shattered Jin Yong's defenses. Jason couldn't help but roast him from the sidelines. You haven't looked at a real girl's face in 5 entire years. No wonder your brain has completely short-circuited. There was definitely no running away this time. Totally out of ideas, Jin Yong had no choice but to ask Jason what to do.
Just because a girl starts a conversation doesn't mean she likes you. That's a total delusion.
Jason, however, was as cool as a cucumber. He said that in times like this, the most important thing is to keep your eyes on the ultimate goal. Before Jin Yong could even react, Jason started breaking it down for him. The whole reason he'd told him to see girls as stones in the first place was to help him keep his cool. But now, not only did this stone have a face, she was actually smiling right at him. How was the plan supposed to work now? Back then, to protect Jin Yong from getting his heart broken, Jason had taught him to treat every girl like a lifeless rock. It actually kept his life peaceful for a long time. But who could have predicted that Sun Woo, someone who completely threw the rulebook out the window, would show up out of nowhere? Now all the side effects were hitting him at once. Jason kept twisting the knife, teasing him about how he had absolutely zero immunity to a girl's face now. It was basically giving that inner coward of his the perfect opportunity to crawl back out. As painful as it was to hear, Jin Yong had to admit it was true. If he let this slide, history would definitely repeat itself. But then Jason suddenly changed his tune and said there was actually another way. All he had to do was find a way to regain his composure in front of Sun Woo.
To keep his heart safe from another brutal rejection, he rejected her without a second thought, bluntly claiming he was busy today.
The scene shifts and they're back in the school hallway. Jin Yong takes a deep breath, looking like he's ready to go all in. But the second he looks up, Sun Woo is standing right there, staring back at him. The courage he just managed to scrape together instantly evaporated. Soo-kyung was the first to notice something was off, saying, Jin Yong keeps looking over here. But to Sun Woo, that gaze felt more like a straight-up glare. Meanwhile, Jin Yong was busy double-checking the plan with Jason. Jason called this the desensitization plan, a way to get him used to making eye contact with girls. But seeing how stiff Jin Yong looked, Jason suggested he just try smiling instead. Jin Yong gritted his teeth and thought, fine, you want to smile, you got it. But the moment he cracked a grin, oh man, that was definitely not a friendly greeting. It felt more like a movie villain trying to take someone out. Jung Seon Woo is left completely speechless, while his friend next to him starts teasing him, saying he actually smiled. This is turning into one massive misunderstanding. Ki-young tries to reassure himself, thinking, I'm so far away, there's no way he saw me clearly. But Jason has officially had enough of his nonsense. With a creepy look like that on his face, staying any longer is just asking for trouble. Jason quickly grabs him and drags him away.
It might seem harsh, but it was honestly the best way to protect himself, ever since he started seeing girls as stones.
Before everyone starts looking at him like he's some kind of total freak. Watching Ki-young scurry off Seon Woo has definitely engraved this guy's face into his memory. Meanwhile, Soo-jung starts spilling all the tea, revealing that Ki-young is actually pretty famous among the girls. Seon Woo listens completely dumbfounded. Turns out plenty of girls have tried to shoot their shot with Ki-young before, but the guy had absolutely zero interest. He's always just focusing on his own work, the textbook definition of a cold, aloof overachiever. But ironically, his total indifference to girls only makes him seem 10 times more attractive to them. Suddenly, Sujung leans in closer and asks, "So why are you asking about him anyway? Is it because he was staring at you earlier? Don't tell me you're actually interested in him." Seon-woo quickly denies it. He insists he just found the guy a bit weird, but deep down he's still bothered by something. He can't shake the feeling that this Ki-young guy is someone he's met before. That nagging sense of deja vu makes it impossible for him to look away. While Seon-woo is lost in thought, Ki-young has already rushed back to his classroom, his mind completely overwhelmed by how agonizingly awkward that just was.
Jin Young found talking to them incredibly easy. After all, who on earth falls in love with a rock?
"Hey, Jason," he whispers. The more Ki-young plays it back in his head, the more he realizes this entire desensitization plan is a total trap. With a look of pure dread, he asks, "Look, isn't the whole point of this plan just to get me used to his face, so I can actually stay calm around him?" Jason, completely unbothered, just shrugs. "Yeah, pretty much." Hearing this only makes Ki-young spiral even more. "But if getting used to him means I have to follow him around and stare at him all day, doesn't that make me a total stalker? Forget desensitization. My reputation will be completely ruined. This is literally social suicide." But Jason just keeps teasing him from the sidelines, saying, "Well, your choices are be a total coward or be a stalker. Take your pick." That's a brutal choice. But then a light bulb suddenly goes off in Ki-young's head. If he can't look at him in person, then looking at his photos should work right. If I can find Seon-woo's social media, I can just practice by staring at my screen. To his surprise, Jason actually gives him a rare thumbs up.
Walking down a hallway packed with stone statues, he felt completely unshakable and even a little smug.
Now that is a brilliant idea. So what are you waiting for? Go straight up to him and ask for his handle. Ki-young's jaw drops. Are you insane? Creeping on him online is embarrassing enough, but asking him for his contact info face to face makes me look like an even bigger creep. But Jason refuses to let him back down, arguing, "Sneaking around makes you look like a total loser. Just go for it." Backed into a corner, Ki-young has no choice but to bite the bullet and go through with it. Shaking like a leaf, he pulls out his phone and blocks Seon-woo as he's walking past. Excuse me, could I have your social media handle?" Seon-woo stops in his tracks and just stares at him in dead silence. Oh God, the tension. It's so painfully awkward that Ki-young wants the ground to swallow him whole. But to his absolute shock, Seon-woo agrees without a second thought. With a warm smile, Seon-woo says, "Sure, no problem." Things are moving so fast that Ki-young's brain completely short-circuits. Seon-woo reaches out, takes Ki-young's phone and starts typing in his handle. Ki-young is secretly celebrating, thinking this is going way smoother than he ever imagined. But as Seon-woo stares at the screen, the smile on his face suddenly freezes.
He turned and asked, "Am I right, Jason?"
He points to the completely blank profile page and asks Ki-young, "Wait, did you literally just make this account?" Blushing furiously, Ki-young has no choice but to confess that he doesn't really use social media. He admits he literally just scrambled to sign up a minute ago. Hearing this, Seon-woo bursts out laughing, which only makes Ki-young even more flustered. Still laughing, Seon-woo leans in closer. "So you're telling me you created a whole new account just so you could find me?" Oh no, this is a total disaster. He wanted to quietly desensitize himself, but now, this looks like the ultimate, most romantic confession ever. Ki-young is frozen in sheer panic. Seon-woo isn't wrong to think that either. To anyone else, his intentions couldn't possibly be more obvious. Seon-woo is laughing so hard he's literally doubling over. He finds this guy absolutely hilarious. Ki-young, on the other hand, is dying of regret. He was so focused on completing his mission that he completely forgot basic logic. He desperately screams for Jason in his head, only to find that Jason has taken on a whole new look and is giving him a look of pure pity. "My friend, you are officially doomed."
To his surprise, Jason had transformed into a buff, muscular, middle-aged man. And while Jason agreed, the trick worked.
Ki-young tries one last desperate, incoherent struggle to save face. No, it's just, I literally just finished registering when I ran into you. I didn't have a choice." But an explanation like that sounded more like an excuse. Seon-woo laughed it off, then suddenly took a step forward, closing the distance between them to the absolute limit. He waved his phone, his eyes filled with playful mischief. "Since you've already got my account, don't you want my phone number too?" Ki-young completely froze up. Facing such a direct tease, he couldn't even squeeze out a single, coherent sentence. Seeing him like this, Seon-woo laughed even harder. He gave him a playful tap on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I'm just teasing you. Your reaction is seriously priceless. He quickly tapped away on the screen, handed the phone back, and said he had already followed his account. Make sure to leave plenty of likes. Even long after Seon-woo waved goodbye, Ki-young was still standing there, dazed in the hallway. It was like his soul had literally left his body. Late that night, Seon-woo got back home and was lying flat on his bed scrolling through his phone. Suddenly, he stumbled upon a post that Ki-young had just uploaded. He burst out laughing on the spot and scoffed. "Oh my God, what on earth is this? Ki-young, your selfie skills are absolutely tragic." On the screen, Ki-young's selfie was taken from such a bizarre angle that it was almost painful to look at.
He was more worried that if Jin Young kept this up, he'd end up single for the rest of his life.
It was basically the ultimate straight guy aesthetic. Meanwhile, Ki-young was tossing and turning in his own bed. His mind was still spinning over what happened earlier that day. Suddenly, his phone screen lit up. He picked it up to check. He almost jumped straight out of bed. Seon-woo had actually liked his post. The drama from the night before instantly spread through the entire classroom. When these girls get to gossiping, they absolutely do not hold back. Soo-jung's face was a picture of pure disbelief. She couldn't believe Ki-young would actually go out of his way to ask for someone's social media account, especially when he went and registered a brand new one just for Seon-woo. Seon-woo was absolutely smug about it. It looked like his little move had hit the bullseye. Still, Soo-jung was a bit skeptical. "But I heard Ki-young is famous for having zero interest in girls. How come he's making a special exception just for you?" But Seon-woo wasn't fazed at all. "If you don't believe me, let's test it right now." Right on cue, Ki-young happened to walk down the hallway. Seon-woo was ready to make his move. How was he going to prove it to show that Ki-young really did have feelings for him? It was his absolute, unbreakable rule of life. Treat every single woman as a stone. To understand why, we have to go back to elementary school.
Jin Young thought Jason was just overreacting. He had sworn off dating a long time ago. He'd much rather be alone than be treated like a creep or a loser.
Soo-jung really went all out for this. She staged a dramatic fall on perfectly flat ground, just waiting for him to rush over and save the damsel in distress. But Ki-young's reaction was so bizarre, it literally left everyone speechless. Sure, he did reach out to help, but his method was a little off to say the least. I mean, who helps a girl up by grabbing her by the back of her collar and hoisting her up like a freshly pulled radish? So much for a romantic moment. There wasn't a shred of romance left. Seon-woo, who was watching from the side, instantly burst out laughing. It looked like this test had completely exposed Ki-young's dense, clueless nature. Honestly, Soo-jung probably wanted the ground to swallow her whole. That wasn't help, that was a straight-up public execution. Despite the absolute disaster of a joke the day before, Ki-young still couldn't stop thinking about Seon-woo's photo. He was literally staring at his screen while walking down the street. Jason, who was walking right next to him, couldn't take it anymore and asked, "Are you seriously not tired of staring at that yet?" But Ki-young's reply was legendary. He simply said, "Every time I look at his face, it feels different." At this point, even Jason realized his friend was completely whipped. Truth be told, Ki-young was also scratching his head about it. Why did everyone else in the world look like plain old stones to him, while Seon-woo was the sole exception?
He was perfectly content keeping to himself. Over the past 5 years, he had completely adapted to treating girls as rocks.
Determined to get to the bottom of this, Jason actually came up with several theories. But before he could even start his analysis, the man himself showed up. Jason quickly nudged him. "Hey, stop staring at your phone. Seon-woo is literally standing right ahead of you." Seon-woo was currently standing by the side of the road, muttering to himself that things were looking pretty bad. Ki-young watched from a distance, totally baffled. What was he doing out here all alone in the middle of the night? But the moment Seon-woo turned around, their eyes locked. Now it was Ki-young's turn to panic. He had just been secretly staring at the guy's picture, and now the real deal was standing right in front of him. Talk about bad timing. Ki-young quickly pocketed his phone and asked why he wasn't home yet. Seon-woo put on a pouting, victimized face, explaining that he wanted to take the bus home, but realized he didn't have any money on him. Ki-young casually asked where he lived, but when he heard the answer, he was completely dumbfounded. The apartment complex Seon-woo lived in was literally right across the street. It was a distance you could easily walk in a few steps, yet he wanted to take a bus. Ki-young's straight guy brain.
The word romance had been deleted from his vocabulary long ago, seeing how stubborn he was.
Absolutely could not compute this. I mean, walking over there would take him less than a minute. Seon-woo let out a heavy sigh explaining that it wasn't that simple. He claimed he had chronic anemia and couldn't walk long distances. Hearing that, Ki-young didn't doubt him for a single second. Without another word, he pulled out his wallet and emptied out all of his spare change, offering to give him every last penny for the bus fare. Seon-woo quickly waved his hands, saying that taking his cash made it feel like he was extorting him. Instead, he made his real move and asked Ki-young to walk him home. Before Ki-young could even process what was happening, Seon-woo was already walking ahead of him. Talk about moving fast. It was completely beyond his expectations. As the two walked side by side under the setting sun, Seon-woo wouldn't stop talking the entire time. She kept sharing all kinds of gossip, but Jin-young's mind was a complete mess. What on earth was she talking about? He didn't register a single word. Seeing his lack of response, Seon-woo even leaned in close to ask if he was actually listening. This kind of forced alone time was pure torture for Jin-young. He felt incredibly awkward and uncomfortable from head to toe.
Jason decided to drop it. As long as Jin Young was fine with it, that was all that mattered. But as Jin Young was walking ahead,
Just when the awkwardness reached its peak, Jin-young suddenly felt a wave of déjà vu, like a similar scene had played out a long time ago. Jin-young remembered. Back when he was a kid, there was a girl he often walked home with. He was experiencing his very first crush back then. He had naturally fallen for her. But as luck would have it, they crossed paths with a few classmates who loved to tease them. They kept nagging and asking if they were dating. This totally panicked the girl. Desperate to draw a line between them, she blurted out in front of everyone, "Who would ever like a guy like him?" With just that one sentence, their relationship went completely cold. He never even got the chance to confess. That's why walking next to Seon-woo now made Jin-young feel incredibly anxious. He kept thinking, the faster they walk this road, the better. Anyway, since he'd be taking the bus from now on, this awkwardness probably wouldn't happen again. But before he could even breathe a sigh of relief, Seon-woo suddenly cried out behind him and collapsed straight onto the ground. What was going on now? Startled, Jin-young quickly turned and asked if she had hurt herself. Sitting on the ground, Seon-woo complained that walking uphill was absolutely killing her, bringing up her anemia once again.
something slipped out of his pocket and hit the floor behind him. Suddenly, a voice called out to him. It turned out he had dropped his phone.
Jin-young was completely speechless. Seon-woo seized the opportunity, reaching out her hand and asking if he could give her a hand up. Before Jin-young's brain could even register what was happening, his hand was already extended, and so the two of them slowly shuffled forward together. The atmosphere instantly became a bit intimate. As Seon-woo kept complaining about being dizzy, she leaned closer and closer, while Jin-young's mind was on repeat. He was actually holding her hand. The sudden progress was almost too fast to believe. Looking at how delicate and fragile Seon-woo seemed, Jin-young suddenly recalled the past and worried he was about to repeat his old mistakes. Back then, when he helped that girl named Soo-young, he had pulled her up as roughly as if he were harvesting a radish. Nothing like how gentle and careful he was being right now. Little did he know Seon-woo was secretly giggling behind his back. It seemed like he had completely fallen for her delicate girl act. Seriously, Jin-young had absolutely no filter on his mouth. He actually blurted out the name he was thinking of. Looking totally confused, Seon-woo asked him who on earth this Soo-young was. Luckily, they had already arrived. Seon-woo didn't push any further. She just thanked him and got ready to head inside. Jin-young's heart finally settled back into his chest. Watching Seon-woo walk away, he felt completely drained of all energy.
Sunwoo handed the phone back, but the moment Jin Young turned around and saw her, things took a very strange turn.
That walk felt more painful than actual torture. He silently prayed in his heart that she would bring enough money tomorrow, and that her anemia would magically cure itself. He really hoped they wouldn't have any more of these awkward, misleading moments alone. But just when he thought he could finally close the chapter on today's Seon-woo, who had already walked quite a distance away, suddenly stopped in her tracks. As if she had remembered some major, unfinished business, Seon-woo suddenly turned around and called out, "Hey, Jin-young!" She said there was still a long way to go before her next allowance, so she'd have to keep bothering him tomorrow. Man, this wasn't asking for help at all. This was a flat-out free ride. Jin-young was completely dumbfounded. His head started spinning, and his mind turned into total chaos. Just then a voice echoed in his head. "Didn't you say you felt uncomfortable around her? Didn't you say you wanted to run away? Didn't you say you wanted this to end? Then what's with that silly grin on your face right now?" Jin-young finally snapped out of it. It turned out that while his mouth said no, his heart was absolutely thrilled. He was completely beyond saving.
Handing it over, Sunwoo asked, This is yours, right?
Seonwoo was really something else. She collapsed from exhaustion after running just a few steps, leaving Jin Yong panicking by her side. If she couldn't keep up physically, why did she insist on running in the first place? And just like that, the sunset faded away. The next day, the atmosphere at school was noticeably off. Seonwoo watched Soo-gyong in front of her, who was violently kicking the air. When she asked, it turned out Soo-gyong was practicing her ultimate move. As soon as Jason opened his mouth, he brought up the mysterious Seonwoo, saying she was the only girl in the entire school who didn't look like a stone to him. Jin Young's mind was totally elsewhere. Pairing such a serious topic with the current situation just felt incredibly awkward, no matter how you looked at it. Speaking of which, Seonwoo's sudden appearance really did feel a bit mysterious. But Jin Young had already noticed some clues. As for why she was so special, the answer might lie in, well, Jin Young was still a bit skeptical. Was it really just because of that? Jason shrugged. Well, I can't think of any other reason. Since they couldn't reach a conclusion, Jin Young decided to put the matter aside for now. After all, he was about to be late for school. But the moment he pushed open the classroom door,
The moment Jin Young turned his head, he froze. What on earth was going on?
the atmosphere instantly felt a little off. His dad was already waiting for him in the living room. Even though it was just a simple everyday greeting, you could tell the relationship between these two was incredibly strained. His dad asked if he was skipping breakfast, but Jin Young didn't even look up, simply replying that he wasn't hungry. He just wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. But his dad spoke up again, mentioning that his mom had made some kimchi stew especially for him. Hearing that was quite heartwarming, but Jin Young didn't stop. He just said he'd eat it when he got back. The emotional distance between this father and son felt like a massive wall. In the end, his dad just left him with one final piece of advice. Make sure you eat well while you're out. Jin Young gave a quick nod and pushed the door open to leave. Jason, if your theory is actually true, does that mean from now on, I'll just be at Seonwoo's mercy, sitting on his shoulder? Jason shrugged and replied, well, there's really nothing we can do about that. As Jin Young walked to school, he prayed in his heart that this was all just some wild, ridiculous guess. Jason, on the other hand, was pretty optimistic, telling him not to overthink it. But just as the words left his mouth,
The Seonwoo standing before him hadn't turned into stone. This was a first in 5 whole years, and his mind completely short-circuited.
a familiar voice called out from behind him. Pyo Jin Young Hee instinctively turned around to look, and he completely froze. Soo-jung was standing right in the middle of the hallway with her arms crossed, blocking his path with an arrogant swagger. Before Jin Young could even react, Soo-jung glared at him and blurted out, I'm going to kick your butt. That left Jin Young completely speechless. Why on earth was he about to get beaten up out of nowhere? But Soo-jung was incredibly self-righteous, claiming that just for this moment, she had stayed up all night practicing her low kicks just to make him suffer a bit. Jin Young stared at her for a long time, before suddenly replying, wait, who on earth are you anyway? Hearing this, Soo-jung nearly exploded with rage on the spot. Thinking back to all the humiliations she had suffered from him, she had never been so humiliated in her entire life, and there was no way she was letting this go today. Looking at this petite girl in front of him, whom he had easily lifted up with one hand before Jin Young felt incredibly helpless. Soo-jung, trying to act generous, held up 3 fingers and said that if he let her kick him just 3 times, they'd call it even. But Jin Young wasn't an idiot.
Having avoided looking at girls for so long, he had absolutely no idea how to reply. His brain was in a state of utter chaos.
There was absolutely no way he was going to agree to such a ridiculous demand. Soo-jung didn't hold back at all, aiming a vicious kick at him while shouting that he was just a 4-eyed loser who begged for a beating. Seeing the fury in her eyes, Jin Young didn't dare stay there for another second. He turned on his heels and bolted toward the end of the hallway. His reaction speed was insanely fast, but Soo-jung had absolutely no intention of letting him off the hook as she chased him down relentlessly. She even bragged about how insanely fast she was and how her physical stamina was off the charts. But when Jin Young looked back, his heart instantly sank. This wasn't just someone chasing him. She looked like a runaway boulder, barreling straight toward him at full speed. He had really messed with the wrong person this time, and there was absolutely no escape. Soo-jung lunged forward in a single stride, yelling, "Gotcha, you brat!" Her low kick was a secret weapon she had been holding back for a long time. Jin Young's heart sank completely. He knew he was going to get seriously hurt. But out of nowhere, Jung Seon-woo chose this exact moment to step out from around the corner. Back then, he got rejected a total of 20 times, and each time they dumped him in a completely different way. Some just straight up told him they didn't like him.
He kept screaming at himself to stay calm, but looking at a real, living, breathing girl, all 5 years of his mental discipline crumbled instantly.
He was just wondering why it was so noisy outside when the unthinkable happened. The kick completely missed Jin Young. Instead, it connected, solidly landing right on Seon-woo's leg with an incredibly heavy impact. Seon-woo was completely stunned, and Soo-jung froze in shock. Things had taken a disastrous turn. The power of that kick was far worse than anyone could have imagined. Seon-woo's ankle ligament tore on the spot. Jin Young panicked, forgetting everything else as he rushed over to help. But in his haste, he stepped right on a slipper lying on the floor. Before he could even help Seon-woo up, he ended up performing a perfect faceplant. The cringe-worthy sound of the impact was enough to make anyone wince. His nose bridge was completely shattered, and blood was now pooling all over the hallway floor. Soo-jung was absolutely horrified. She had only wanted to stir up some trouble, but it had turned into a massive disaster. How on earth was she going to clean up this mess? Having caused such a huge disaster, Soo-jung was completely humbled. Aside from apologizing repeatedly, there was nothing else she could do. She was totally helpless. In the next scene, both of them had been sent to the school clinic.
Seeing no response, Sunwoo asked in confusion, "Are you okay? Why aren't you saying anything?" Jin Young tried desperately to reassure himself.
One with a torn ankle ligament and the other with a shattered nose. Needless to say, the atmosphere in the room was more than a little awkward. Seon-woo was actually quite generous, mentioning that the girl always acted like that anyway. Jin Young could only offer a strained, polite laugh in response, saying he was fine too. But this unexpected chance to be alone with him came far too suddenly. Just as Jin Young was about to consult with Jason, he saw that the guy had totally changed his tune, casually sipping afternoon tea while taking a jab at him. He told Jin Young to stop showing that pathetic, cowardly face of his. Jason had actually hit the nail on the head now. Only the two of them were left alone in the clinic. Jin Young's heart was pounding like crazy. This was a rare opportunity, and he absolutely couldn't afford to say the wrong thing and ruin the conversation. Seon-woo suddenly rolled over and asked Jin Young, "Hey, do you know what's for lunch today?" The moment Jin Young heard they were having fried fish, his face lit up instantly. I guess for a hardcore foodie, even being injured can't put a damper on his appetite. Seon-woo casually followed up, asking if he usually ate breakfast before school. Jin Young answered honestly, just to avoid his awkward dad at home, he'd rather head to school on an empty stomach every single day. Seon-woo went quiet for a moment after hearing this,
thinking that maybe he was just seeing things because he hadn't looked at a real person in so long. But as he kept staring,
and gently suggested he try to get along with his father. Jin Young could only offer an awkward laugh. Talk about touching a sore spot. This made Jin Young freeze up completely. With the two of them sitting so close, the tension in the room instantly became incredibly thick. He couldn't help but think back to the very first time he saw Seon-woo, and the words that had slipped right out of his mouth. "You're so beautiful." Back then, Jin Young figured he was just talking crazy because he hadn't been around girls in forever, making his brain short-circuit. But now looking at Seon-woo lying in the hospital bed, he realized he hadn't been exaggerating at all. She really was so gorgeous that he couldn't tear his eyes away. Suddenly, Seon-woo leaned in close, staring right at him. "What are you staring at?" she teased. "Am I really that beautiful?" Jin Young had absolutely no idea how to handle this. Flustered, he practically jumped out of his skin, stammering wildly, No, it's not what you think." I was just looking at that, but Seon-woo just burst out laughing, waving her hand and apologizing. "I'm sorry, I was just teasing you." "Don't take it seriously," Jin Young stood there completely mortified. So his incredibly embarrassed reaction had been fully on display this whole time. Still giggling, Seon-woo sat up straight and sighed happily. "Oh, Jin Young, teasing you is seriously the best."
the words, "Wow, you're really beautiful," slipped right out of his mouth.
Still totally dazed, Jin Young blankly asked, "Wait, what do you mean by that?" Seon-woo replied bluntly, "It means that the second someone teases you, even a little bit, you completely lose your cool and start babbling nonsense." It looked like Jin Young was completely wrapped around Seon-woo's finger. As Jin Young continued to stammer out apologies, Seon-woo literally snorted with laughter. She waved her hand and said, "Seriously, there's absolutely no need to apologize. It's just that you look so unbelievably cute right now." Jin Young froze his brain, short-circuiting once again. How could anyone resist that looking at the girl in front of him? A sudden thought popped into his head. Could what Jason said actually be true? Sunwoo, this girl who had suddenly appeared in his life, really was strange in so many ways. Why was she the only person in the entire world who didn't look like a cold, lifeless stone to him? To get to the bottom of this crazy theory, Jin Young decided to head home and demand answers from Jason. Jason finally spoke up, saying the reason was actually incredibly simple. It's not nearly as complicated as you're making it out to be. Having watched how Jin Young and Sunwoo behaved around each other, Jason laid out his verdict.
Instantly, the air froze. Jin Young stood there, utterly horrified at himself. Why did he just blurt his inner thoughts out loud?
He said, "Dude, you've totally fallen in love with Sunwoo at first sight." At this point, he literally couldn't think of any other explanation. Those words completely broke Jin Young's brain. He thought he was about to uncover some earth-shattering secret, but it turned out to be the most cliché trope ever. Now that the truth was out, the days ahead were going to be anything but easy. Jin Young was really going all out this time. He grabbed Soo-jung from behind, putting her in a tight lock, while yelling that they were starting special training. This wasn't a training session. It was a death sentence. Opposite them, Sunwoo had already gotten into a fighting stance. "If you have the guts to pick a fight, you better be ready to face the music," she said. Poor Soo-jung, who was being used as a human shield, was practically in tears, begging Jin Young to let go. But Jin Young was absolutely determined to cooperate with Sunwoo. Without another word, she unleashed a massive middle kick, aiming to break some ribs. The moment the kick landed, Jin Young was sent flying backward. Even now, he still couldn't wrap his head around what had actually happened. Why did it have to be him? Love at first sight. You actually want to be with me. Jin Young stood there completely frozen.
Sunwoo was completely stunned, too. She was totally caught off guard by this incredibly direct confession. The second those words left his mouth, he regretted it.
He stared at Sunwoo, his brain still trying to process the situation, while she stood with her back turned to him. Her voice was as cold as ice. "I was just being slightly polite to you, and you're already daydreaming." She whipped around, her eyes filled with utter disgust. "You pathetic loser." Those words felt like a knife to the chest, completely shattering Jin Young's very last shred of hope. When he finally woke up, he still couldn't shake it off. Those harsh words felt way too real. Sitting nearby, Jason asked if he'd had a nightmare. "With a reaction like that, there's no way you just slept badly," he said, seeing right through him. "Let me guess you dreamed about Sunwoo rejecting you again, didn't you?" Jin Young couldn't even deny it. There was no hiding from this. Jason continued. "Looks like your deep-seated fear of women has been triggered all over again." Jin Young nodded in agreement. Lately, these nightmares had been happening ridiculously often. Even Jason was puzzled now. This doesn't make sense. When on earth did all of this even start?
He quickly snatched his phone back, mumbled a rushed "thank you," and realized his only option was to run for his life.
Jason, stepping back into his role as a master analyst, declared, "Since you fell for Sunwoo at first sight, all this pain is simply because you're suffering from a one-sided crush." Jin Young sat there completely speechless, while Jason just laid out the cold truth. "Bro, you're just straight-up chicken. You're totally terrified of that woman." But Jason wasn't about to just stand by and do nothing. He looked at him and gave him a thumbs up, actually quoting The Art of War, saying stuff like, "Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will win 100 battles." Jin Young actually took it to heart this time. If he wanted to know the enemy, he had to figure out Sunwoo's deal first. Jason tapped him on the shoulder and nodded, agreeing that this tactic was flawless. After all, if you don't even know what you're up against, how can you expect to overcome your fear? Jin Young thought about it and realized he barely knew anything about Sunwoo. Aside from her cold, expressionless face, he was completely in the dark. The two of them snuck all the way to Class 5, Grade 11, Sunwoo's classroom. Before they even stepped inside, Jin Young's heart started pounding like crazy. Jason quickly tried to pump him up, whispering, "Bro, keep it together."
Jin Young bolted forward without looking back, yelling, "Thank you," and "I'm sorry," as he ran, leaving a dazed Sunwoo standing there all alone.
"We're just here to gather intel." Taking a deep breath, he finally pushed the door open. But the moment he looked inside, he realized the vibe in there was a little off. He scanned the room, but Sunwoo wasn't even in her seat. Jason started guessing that maybe she'd just gone to the restroom. Before he could even respond, a cold voice suddenly called out from behind him. He spun around, and a big burly guy was staring him down. His name was Gui Myung, and his tone was incredibly hostile as he rudely barked at him to get out of the way, claiming that was his seat. Given Jin Yong's non-confrontational nature, his immediate instinct was to apologize and move aside. But Gui Myung didn't even look him in the eye. He just scoffed with total disgust. This instantly set Jason off. Glaring at Gui Myung's arrogant attitude, a fire flared up inside Jason, and he muttered that he really wanted to beat this fat pig to a pulp. But business came first. Jin Yong swallowed his pride, walked up and asked Gui Myung if he'd seen Seong-woo. Since their seats were close, surely he'd know something. Gui Myung let out a sneer, saying he'd seen this kind of thing a million times.
She probably had never met anyone so bizarre in her entire life. Right now, Jin Young wanted nothing more than to slap himself.
There were always some clueless losers getting totally infatuated with a girl like her. Jin Young's heart sank when he heard that. That tone was definitely hostile. Next to him, Jason was absolutely furious, wishing he could whip out some heavy weapons and blast this fat jerk to pieces. Jin Young quickly held him back in his mind, telling himself to focus on the mission and tolerate this guy just one last time. Suppressing his anger, he asked again, "Do you know where Seong-woo is or not?" But Gui Myung didn't even look back, coldly spitting out a harsh response. How on earth would he know the whereabouts of that trashy woman? That was the last straw for Jin Young. He snapped, demanding to know what Gui Myung's problem was, and telling him to watch his mouth instead of trash-talking Seong-woo. But Gui Myung didn't care at all. He just smirked and replied, "Looks like you're completely beyond saving, kid." Jin Young wasn't about to let it slide, though. He told Gui Myung to stand up, saying he had a little present for him. Gui Myung just looked annoyed, thinking this kid was just trying to start trouble.
How could he say something like that to a girl he'd just met? Now he'd never be able to clear his name. 5 years of mental discipline ruined in a single second.
No one expected Jin Young to actually throw a punch. He swung hard, striking Gui Myung right in the gut. The loud, sharp thud left everyone around them completely dumbfounded. Now things had officially gotten out of hand. That heavy blow left Gui Myung completely dazed. But before he could even recover, there was suddenly some noise at the door. Seong-woo pushed it open and walked in looking thoroughly confused as she asked, "Why does it sound like someone's slaughtering a pig in here?" Looking up and spotting Jin Young, she was actually quite surprised. She smiled and greeted him and asked what was going on. Bursting with a righteous fury, Jin Young pointed at Gui Myung to snitch. "This fat pig was just talking trash about you, so I'm teaching him a lesson on your behalf." He expected Seong-woo to stop him, but she just gave a casual, "Oh," and smiled. "Go right ahead then. He's always asking for a beating anyway." Now it was Jin Young's turn to be dumbfounded. Looking at the pitiful, whimpering Gui Myung next to him, he began to have his doubts. What on earth was the deal with these two? Others were so terrified of him, they burst into tears right on the spot. I mean, who could handle that little Jin Young's heart was shattered into a million pieces?
He cursed at himself in his head. Jin Young, you absolute idiot. He wanted to curl up and die.
Seong-woo waved her hand with a laugh, saying Gui Myung had been like this since they were kids, and told Jin Young not to take it too seriously. Jin Young was completely speechless. It turned out these two were actually childhood friends. After the farce finally ended, Jin Young and Gui Myung sat down by the edge of the sports field. Jin Young took the initiative to apologize, admitting he'd been a bit too hot-headed. Gui Myung turned out to be pretty chill about it. He waved his hand dismissively, saying that a punch with that little power was absolutely nothing to him. Still finding it hard to believe? Jin Young double-checked. "You guys really grew up together." Gui Myung nodded and said, "Yeah, we've been running around together since we were 3. Hearing this, Jin Young's mind immediately started scheming. Yes, isn't this the perfect opportunity to carry out Project Jason? If I can just get Lin Gui Ming to spill the beans, then all of Zheng Xianyu's secrets will finally be within reach." But Lin Gui Ming was completely serious this time, and he immediately threw cold water on Pu Jin Young. He told him, "If you're seriously planning to go after Zheng Xianyu, you'd better give up now." This only made Pu Jin Young even more confused. "What giving up before even making a move?" Lin Gui Ming explained. "You seriously have no idea how insanely popular Zheng Xianyu is."
If word about what just happened gets out, how am I ever going to show my face at school again?
"The guys chasing her are literally lined up in droves. She's the ultimate goddess of our school. But the weirdest part is, despite so many guys throwing themselves at her, not a single one has ever succeeded. The success rate is literally 0. Pu Jin Young found that reasonable. After all, she has thousands of fans, so it makes sense that her standards would be sky high. Still unwilling to give up, he asked, Is it possible that those guys just weren't her type physically? Lin Guiming didn't deny it. Yeah, that's definitely possible, he said. But then right after that, his tone suddenly became mysterious. He said her popularity wasn't the real issue at all. The real reason he was telling Pu Jinyong to back off was actually a hidden secret. Lin Guiming and Zheng Shanyu actually grew up together. From kindergarten all the way through elementary school, they were practically inseparable, spending every day bickering and playing together. But those innocent childhood days completely changed once they hit middle school. One day in the hallway, Lin Guiming was acting like his usual rowdy self. He yelled out shamelessly, "Hey, you wicked girl. If you've got nothing to do, go buy me some bread."
Once he got home, he vented to Jason. Jason, however, was pretty chill about it, even joking that it actually sounded kind of charming.
But the moment Zheng Shanyu turned around, Lin Guiming froze on the spot. Even though it was the exact same face, it felt like he was looking at a completely different person. From that very second, Lin Guiming knew deep down that the Zheng Shanyu standing in front of him was no longer the girl he used to know. Lin Guiming's story grew even creepier. He said that although she was smiling, it wasn't the smile of the girl he grew up with. That unexplainable, eerie feeling still gives him goosebumps to this day. Lin Guiming helplessly came clean, saying that from that day on, Zheng Shanyu became incredibly strange. That was why he urged Pu Jinyong to just give up on her once and for all. Pu Jinyong fell completely silent. What did he mean by something was off? Walking down the school hallway, Pu Jinyong kept chewing on it. But looking at Zheng Shanyu, he hadn't noticed anything unusual about her at all. Normally, you'd just laugh off such nonsense. But deep in Pu Jinyong's heart,
Jin Young wasn't in the mood to listen. What was bothering him the most wasn't even the embarrassment anymore.
he felt like there was more to this than meets the eye. Still, he was second-guessing himself, thinking that maybe Lin Guiming was just overreacting. It was probably just his own personal bias. But as Lin Guiming and Pu Jinyong were talking, they ran right into Zheng Shanyu. Seeing the two of them huddled together, Zheng Shanyu was quite puzzled and asked, "Since when did you two get so close?" Pu Jinyong's heart started pounding. They had literally just been gossiping about her behind her back, so there was no way he could tell her the truth. He needed to come up with a lie on the spot to cover it up. But before he could even open his mouth, Lin Guiming went ahead and blew their cover. With a provocative smirk, Lin Guiming yelled, "Hey, brat, we were actually just talking trash about you behind your back." Pu Jinyong completely froze in shock. He'd seen bad teammates before, but this guy was actively trying to sabotage him. What on earth was this fat kid's problem? Zheng Shanyu was completely stunned. She stared directly at Pu Jinyong and asked, "Were you guys really talking trash about me?" Terrified Pu Jinyong couldn't even form a proper sentence, stammering out, No, it's not like that." Meanwhile, Sujung couldn't stop laughing. Zheng Shanyu's entire gaze toward Pu Jinyong changed. She bluntly told him he had a serious character issue. But that fat idiot Lin Guiming had absolutely zero social awareness.
This whole thing was just too bizarre. Why was every other girl in school a stone, but Sun Wu was the only living, breathing human?
He kept adding fuel to the fire, boasting, "Oh, I was trash-talking you real bad. I even brought up all your deepest, darkest secrets." Pu Jinyong completely snapped. If he let this idiot keep talking, his entire life would be utterly ruined. He roared at Lin Guiming to shut up, swung his jacket, and started thrashing the fat guy with it. He was hitting him so hard that even Jason was left speechless, thinking that if Pu Jinyong hadn't acted, he might have blasted the guy himself. Seeing Pu Jinyong lose his mind like that, Sujung grabbed Zheng Shanyu and walked away. To her, those two looked no different from absolute fools. In the blink of an eye, school was over, and Pu Jinyong walked toward the school gate alone. He felt incredibly frustrated. He had wanted to dig up some intel, but not only did he get absolutely nothing, he had also completely ruined his own reputation. Right now, he wanted nothing more than to rip Lin Guiming to shreds. It was all because of that fat idiot's big mouth. He had completely messed everything up. But just as he was wallowing in his bad luck, a familiar voice suddenly echoed from behind him. Zheng Shanyu hadn't left after all. She approached him with a sweet smile and asked, "So talking trash behind my back earlier?"
Even Jason didn't have an answer, so he asked Jin Young what he planned to do next. After all, he couldn't just ignore something this crazy.
"Did it make you feel really good?" Ki-young is so freaked out he can barely get his words out. Why on earth hasn't this girl gone home yet? Just as he's about to open his mouth to explain, Sun Wu suddenly bursts out laughing. She is definitely not playing by the rules. while Ki-young is still desperately trying to explain himself. Insisting that he really didn't do any of that, Sunwoo just waves her hand, looking like she already saw right through him. Who would have thought? Instead of getting mad, Sunwoo actually chuckles and smooths things over for Ki-young, saying that fat guy Gui Min just loves to cause trouble. She completely trusts Ki-young's character. That was such a smooth way out for him. But right after that, she makes a sudden request, asking Ki-young to walk her home. Ki-young initially thinks she's out of bus money again, but turns out she just doesn't want to deal with the exhausting uphill climb to her place. Honestly, Ki-young is starting to feel a bit uneasy right now. Even though he didn't say anything bad about her, they were definitely gossiping behind her back. He figures it's best to keep his head down and avoid any extra drama, so he decides to keep the secret locked away forever. But Sunwoo, on the other hand, starts putting on quite a performance, sighing and complaining dramatically at the sight of the slope.
It won't be long before all kinds of crazy rumors drown him. Right now, Jin Young's head is completely filled with...
She acts as if she's about to walk through fire. Ki-young, being the typical dense guy he is, thinks to himself, "Come on, this hill isn't even that steep." But then Sunwoo starts lecturing him, claiming she has severe anemia, and that walking up a hill like this would practically kill her. She even claims she gets dizzy just standing still. Ki-young is completely dumbfounded by her dramatics, and before he can even offer a word of sympathy, Sunwoo suddenly shifts gears. Staring right at him, she says she wants him to push her from behind. She starts nagging him to hurry up, complaining that it'll be dark soon. Left with no choice, Ki-young reluctantly agrees. But the moment his hands make contact, the vibe instantly changes. Ki-young, being his usual clueless self, asks if this makes it any easier. Sunwoo smiles, nods, and says it's definitely much better. But the very next second, she suddenly giggles. Sunwoo squirms away, saying, "Oh my, don't touch me like that. My back is super sensitive. It tickles the moment you touch it." Hearing this makes Ki-young's heart skip a beat. This girl is absolutely doing this on purpose. How can she just throw around jokes like that so casually? Looking at her from behind, Ki-young's mind starts playing tricks on him. He starts thinking if they get closer in the future,
images of himself being labeled a creep. If something like this happens just one more time, his school life is completely over.
maybe one day he won't be pushing her from behind anymore, but carrying her up the hill on his back instead. Just as he's getting lost in his wild fantasy, Sunwoo's voice suddenly starts clapping in his mind, mockingly praising him for such a sweet daydream. Ki-young quickly shakes his head, trying to snap out of it. He tells himself that having a little fantasy isn't against the law. At least it's better than picking out names for their future kids already right. But then Sunwoo suddenly calls out from ahead. I think so too. Ki-young is still totally lost in his daydream when a loud shout from Sunwoo instantly snaps him back to reality. Sunwoo complains testily, telling him to slow down because he's pushing her so hard she can barely breathe. This completely panics Ki-young. He quickly lets go and apologizes, admitting he got a bit distracted. Well, it's late at night, which definitely makes it easy for his mind to wander. Finally, they reach the top of the hill. Ki-young looks around and realizes the view here is absolutely stunning. You can see the entire city's night skyline from up here. So this is the kind of place Sunwoo lives in. Even though the climb is a killer, this wide-open view really puts you in a great mood. Looking out into the distance, Sunwoo marvels that it's actually her first time discovering such a hidden gem so close to her home.
Seeing him look so pathetic and dejected, Jason didn't feel sorry for him at all. Instead, he felt like all 5 years of his training.
This comes as a bit of a surprise to Ki-young. Sunwoo gives a self-deprecating laugh, saying that for a severely anemic patient like her, she'd normally never have the energy to climb this high. Today, she only made it thanks to him. But before she can even finish expressing her gratitude, Sunwoo suddenly does a complete 180. Glaring at Ki-young, she snaps, "Are you trying to get me killed?" It turns out Ki-young pushed her way too hard earlier, completely draining her of whatever energy she had left. Now she can't even take another step to get home. Ki-young has no choice but to keep bowing and apologizing. Seeing how submissive and honest Ki-young is being, Sunwoo suddenly goes quiet. The atmosphere between them instantly becomes a bit intense and charged. With her back to Ki-young, Sunwoo gazes at the distant sunset and says, "Well, since you showed me such a beautiful view, I guess I'll let you off the hook for pushing me too hard this time." Standing behind her, Ki-young catches a glimpse of her profile, bathed in the glow of the sunset, and he is completely mesmerized. Sunwoo runs a hand through her hair, softly muttering about how gorgeous the view is. It really is an incredibly beautiful scene. But inside, Ki-young starts to feel a sense of unease. He suddenly recalls what Guimin told him earlier. Guimin always felt there was something slightly off about Sunwoo, like some unspoken contradiction. Ki-young didn't really get what he meant back then.
Had completely gone down the drain. The more Jin Young thought about it, the more hopeless he felt. He was convinced his life was totally ruined.
But looking at her now, he realizes he can't tear his eyes away. If this feeling of having his mind completely consumed by her is what Guimin meant by something off, then he's definitely fallen for it too. After hesitating back and forth, Ki-young decides to just lay his cards on the table. He calls out to Sunwoo and confesses. To be honest, Guimin and I really were talking about you behind your back just now. Sunwoo clearly didn't expect him to be so direct, and she freezes on the spot. Staring at him in disbelief, she asks, "Did you really say bad things about me?" Ki-young quickly waves his hands to deny it, explaining that it definitely wasn't anything bad. He was just curious because he heard she and Guimin were childhood friends, so he ended up asking a few questions. But when the kid got anxious, he blurted out his innermost thoughts. He admitted that he actually really wanted to get to know her a little better. As soon as those words left his mouth, the atmosphere instantly changed. Jung-young was still frantically looking for a cloth, terrified that Seon-woo would think he was playing sneaky tricks behind her back. But to his surprise, Seon-woo suddenly laughed. She said she didn't care about such trivial things at all, and told Gum-young to stop worrying. Now that the misunderstanding was cleared up, after that, his confidence was completely shot. Feeling totally helpless, Jin-young had no choice but to turn to his imaginary friend for help.
Just as he was spiraling into despair, Jason suddenly threw a punch without warning, and boy, did it land hard.
There was no reason for either of them to stay. Seon-woo waved goodbye, thanking him for making the effort to walk her back. Jung-young was left feeling completely baffled. Seon-woo's reaction just now was truly hard to read. Jason, on the other hand, saw right through it. Stroking his chin, he teased that Jung-young really didn't need to be so brutally honest sometimes. Jung-young was completely dumbfounded. Had he said something wrong? Seeing his confusion, Jason immediately switched into teacher mode. He said that while being honest with girls is a good thing sometimes, playing dumb works much better than telling the blunt truth. This left Gum-young even more conflicted. As he watched Seon-woo walk away, his heart was pounding with uncertainty. What on earth was going on in that girl's mind? Meanwhile, Seon-woo was walking home all by herself. The setting sun cast a long shadow behind her. Who would have guessed that after acting so calm just moments ago, she now had a faint smile playing on her lips? She whispered to herself, "That Gum-young guy, he really knows how to surprise someone sometimes." While Seon-woo was walking home with a sweet smile on her face, Gum-young, on the other hand, could barely take a few steps.
Jin Young didn't even have time to react before he was sent flying straight to the ground. Pulling back his fist, Jason,
Before collapsing to the ground in sheer exhaustion. Gasping for air, he complained that his stamina was really starting to fail him. Jason chimed in and asked, "Hey bro, it's been a while since you played soccer, right?" Gum-young casually gave a half-hearted reply. Jason kept nagging him, saying that sweating more would make him look much more manly. Jung-young didn't even bother to argue. He just gave a flat, "I know," in response. But just as he was about to keep walking, he suddenly stopped. Looking down, he saw his shoelaces had come undone at the worst possible moment. As he bent down to tie them, a voice suddenly came from behind, asking why he had suddenly squatted down out of nowhere. Before Gum-young could even react, he looked up and saw teacher Cho Han-gyo, who called out his name directly. His tone sounded pretty ominous as he warned that Gum-young almost got hurt, even snapping, "Do you have a death wish?" This scared the life out of Gum-young. He quickly and politely greeted him, saying, "Hello, Mr. Cho." Judging by his expression, Mr. Cho was in a terrible mood. Jung-young had definitely walked right into the line of fire.
reminded him that now wasn't the time to act all brooding and dramatic. Instead of sitting around regretting things, he needed to come up with a real plan.
"Don't look up. Keep your head down," Mr. Cho barked, shoving Gum-young's head back down. Gum-young was completely dazed. Still not understanding what was happening, he actually dared to ask why. But Mr. Cho had a very simple explanation. He said, looking up at someone from below made them look ugly, and girls absolutely hated that angle of death. Simply put, he was just feeling self-conscious. After calling him a brat, Mr. Cho walked away without looking back, but not before leaving him with one last warning. Don't just suddenly stop when you're walking next time. With that, Jung-young was left standing alone in the hallway, completely spaced out. As he watched Mr. Cho walk away, Gum-young didn't care at all. After all, in his eyes, Mr. Cho was no different from a mere rock. If he actually dared to say that out loud, Mr. Cho would probably destroy him on the spot. In truth, Gum-yong was hiding a big secret. Because he was so terrified of being rejected by girls, he chose to see all of them as rocks to protect himself. That way he wouldn't get hurt. But in this dull gray world of his, there was one exception.
Jason kept analyzing the situation. Even if they couldn't figure out why that girl wasn't a stone statue, all Jin Young had to do was steer clear of her.
Seon-woo was the only one who appeared in vibrant color. Now things were about to get very interesting. To make sure he would never be rejected again, Gum-yong started pushing himself to the absolute limit. Whether it was burying his head in books all day or sweating it out at the gym, he was willing to try anything as long as it made him stronger. His hard work definitely paid off and the results were instant. Now on the soccer field, he was the absolute star player. Even when Gui-myung tried his absolute hardest to block him, he couldn't stop his offensive drive. He could only watch as the ball flew into the net. Gum-yong was no longer the invisible nobody he used to be. His classmates now gathered around him, feeling like they had hit the jackpot by having him in their class. Meanwhile, Gui-myung was completely fired up. He chanted slogans louder than anyone, determined to teach Class 5 a lesson. However, the girls weren't buying it at all. They were already dreading having to go back to a classroom filled with the stench of sweat. But the moment Gum-yong's name was mentioned, the atmosphere instantly shifted. Who would have thought that the boy who used to be a complete nobody—
After all, they weren't even in the same class. As long as Jin Young did a good job of staying out of sight, they'd probably never cross paths again.
was now the center of attention. The screams from the stands never stopped, and everyone felt— honestly, Jin Young stands out so much these days that you can spot him anywhere in an instant. He's really causing a massive stir. Even Seon-woo was completely mesmerized. As he stared at that figure on the field, the girls in the stands were already buzzing with gossip. They were saying that although Jin Young usually looks quiet and gentle, he's incredibly hot the moment he steps onto the field. But the key thing is, he seems totally uninterested in girls. That cold, aloof vibe is actually making everyone fall for him even harder. Soo-jong was joining in on the excitement nearby too. Gushing about Jin Young is radiating this cool, irresistible charm. Seon-woo, though, couldn't quite wrap his head around it. He couldn't understand how Jin Young suddenly became a campus idol, and even felt that everyone was exaggerating way too much. Seon-woo remained silent, just listening quietly. In reality, he was the one who knew best what the old Jin Young was actually like. Back then, he was so incredibly nervous that he could barely walk side by side with a girl. Compared to the soccer heartthrob on the field right now, they were like two completely different people. Thinking about this massive contrast, Seon-woo couldn't help himself.
Hearing this, Jin Young realized it actually made perfect sense. Jason was right. As long as he avoided eye contact and didn't run into her, he wouldn't make a fool of himself again.
And burst out laughing. Listening to Soo-jong's praises, Seon-woo nodded in agreement. The Jin Young of today really was a whole new person. Just then the school bell rang, bringing the soccer match to a close. Everyone was cheering, chanting that their victory was all thanks to Jin Young. He was the class hero of the day. Jin Young remained humble, though. After waving goodbye to everyone, he headed off completely drenched in sweat from the intense game. He planned to head over to the outdoor sinks for a quick wash. But just as he leaned down to rinse his face, a voice suddenly echoed from behind. The voice praised him for his beautiful shot. Right as Jin Young was washing his face, someone suddenly popped up behind him and sighed, muttering, "To think someone actually scored a goal that even I couldn't block." Jin Young turned around and saw it was Gui-myung. He casually returned the compliment, saying Gui-myung's goalkeeping was pretty impressive today too. But Gui-myung didn't appreciate it at all. He gritted his teeth and spat out 4 words. How utterly humiliating. Jin Young was left completely baffled. They won the match, so how on earth was it humiliating? Gui-myung's face suddenly turned dead serious as he asked Jin Young.
Before he knew it, the next day arrived. The moment Jin Young set foot in school, he was ready to put his ultimate game of hide-and-seek into action.
If he knew about the absolute darkest side of soccer. Jin Young, however, couldn't care less and bluntly replied, "Not interested." But Gui-myung completely ignored him and just went on ranting anyway. He complained that whenever a team loses, everyone blames the goalkeeper first. Even if he blocked 10 shots before that, letting just one slide by makes all his hard work completely worthless. In the end, he's always the scapegoat. Hearing this, Jin Young actually agreed that the position was pretty frustrating. But out of nowhere, Guimyong's tone shifted, and he stared daggers right at Jin Yong, declaring, "And that is exactly why I hate you." Jin Yong was totally thrown off. How did he suddenly become the target of this guy's anger? Guimyong kept grumbling about how failing to block that last shot was eating him alive. Jin Yong didn't say a word, but the Jason inside his head was already losing his temper, ready to charge out with an axe. Jin Yong quickly told him to calm down in his mind. There was no need to take someone like this seriously. Instead, he grabbed a bucket of cold water and splashed it right into Guimyong's face, calling it a gift. That finally shut Guimyong up.
But before he could even get his bearings, a familiar voice chimed in right next to him. "Oh, well, look who it is. We meet again so soon."
Well, this was great. He only wanted to make Guimyong shut his mouth, but now the two of them were full-on scrapping by the sinks. Jin Yong fought back, calling him a fat pig, while Guimyong, absolutely seething, pointed at Jin Yong and yelled, "Four eyes." Without missing a beat, Jin Yong fired right back, shouting, "You're wearing glasses too, you idiot." The racket was so loud that even Xian Wu, all the way across the field, heard it. He and Sujong were deeply confused, because the voices sounded so familiar. Shonwu claimed he couldn't hear clearly, but deep down, he had already figured it out. When those two who never got along got together, it was bound to spell trouble. They decided to head over and see what was happening. They wanted to see what kind of mess those two were making. By the time they arrived, the atmosphere had already dropped to freezing point. Neither of them was willing to take a step back. If things kept escalating, it wouldn't be as simple as splashing water anymore. Jin Yong was still complaining about his clothes being completely soaked, but Guimyong couldn't care less. He retorted that if they were wet, he should just take them off and wring them out. With that, he whipped off his shirt. Seeing this,
Sunwoo stood right in front of him with a playful smile, teasingly asking, "You haven't forgotten about me already, have you?"
Jin Yong also started pulling off his drenched shirt, refusing to back down while talking trash, promising to teach him a lesson after school. But just as the two of them were standing there shirtless, ready to keep squaring off, Xian Wu walked over. He asked them why they were still bickering when the school bell had already rung. Jin Yong, who had just finished stripping, completely froze on the spot. If the girl he had a crush on saw him in this ridiculous state, he would never be able to live it down. Xianwu and Sujong, having just arrived, were instantly dumbfounded by the scene. The visual shock was just too much. The two of them stood there for ages, unable to process what they were seeing, both of them shirtless. Talk about a contrast in treatment. The second Gui Min bared all that flesh of his, Sun Wu, and the others didn't stick around for even a single second. They turned on their heels and left immediately. Gui Min, still acting tough, muttered that if he'd known, he wouldn't have invited them over in the first place. Sun Wu didn't even look back, just telling him to get lost. But Gui Min kept grumbling and cursing under his breath. He complained that girls have absolutely no taste, but Jin Yong was completely mortified. His mind was filled with a traumatic memory of being seen completely exposed just moments ago.
Talk about terrible luck. Jin Young had just promised himself he'd stay away, but the second he looked up, he ran straight into her.
The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. This whole disaster was entirely that idiot Gui Min's fault. Seething with rage, Jin Yong rushed over and locked him in a chokehold. He was determined to teach him a lesson once and for all. Gui Min struggled, yelling at Jin Yong to let go. He even called Jin Yong a four-eyed loser, which actually made Jin Yong laugh out of sheer frustration. "Hey, aren't you wearing glasses too?" Sun Wu had watched the whole scene in silence, but her mind was clearly elsewhere. Before they knew it, the next day arrived. The school sports field was buzzing with energy. Jin Yong, dressed in his sportswear, was charging forward with the soccer ball. Judging by his aggressive play, it looked like he was trying to vent all of yesterday's frustration right there on the field. But who would have thought Gui Min's massive frame wasn't just for show? A shot that Jin Yong was absolutely sure would go in was actually caught solidly by Gui Min. The entire crowd erupted instantly, with everyone screaming in disbelief. Gui Min had actually blocked Jin Yong's shot. Drunk on his own success, Gui Min held the ball wearing a smug smirk. He even taunted Jin Yong on purpose, asking what his deal was, saying he was playing like total garbage today and wasn't nearly as sharp as he was yesterday. This little guy was named Jason. Jason gave him a piece of advice. If you're so terrified of rejection, just treat all girls like stones.
Panicking, he screamed for Jason in his head, desperately asking what he should do. But Jason remained cool as a cucumber.
Jin Yong stood there, feeling incredibly frustrated, but there was no denying his game was totally off. He couldn't even find the words to talk back. Meanwhile, Jason was watching the game closely, thinking Jin Young's performance today was definitely out of character. The first half was finally over. In his current state, Jin Young really needed to find a quiet spot to rest. He sat alone by the bleachers, looking so utterly dejected that anyone could tell he had something heavy on his mind. Just then, a voice suddenly drifted into his ear, saying he looked pretty exhausted. Jin Young snapped his head up to find Sun Woo standing right in front of him, greeting him with a warm smile. "Hey, Jin Young." Jin Young instantly froze up, his heart racing so fast he could barely get his words out. Seeing him like this, Sun Woo found his over-the-top reaction quite amusing. It was as if he'd just seen a ghost. Without a second thought, he urgently gestured for Sun Woo to squat down with him. Sun Woo had never seen him act so weirdly and just stood there completely baffled. But Jin Young couldn't possibly explain himself right now. He could only bite the bullet and plead with her to do as he asked. But once she actually crouched down, a sudden realization hit him. He remembered what their teacher, Miss Jo Han-gil, had said.
Telling him to relax. Just act exactly how you normally do around the stone people, he advised.
It turned out the teacher wasn't lying at all. Some things really do look completely different when you change your perspective. He used to think Sun Woo was as stiff as a board, never really seeing her as a girl. But looking at her from this angle, the visual impact was overwhelmingly intense. Jin Young was so incredibly embarrassed that he wished the ground would swallow him whole. To make things worse, Sun Woo leaned in closer, asking if he simply didn't want to look at her face. Talk about a massive misunderstanding. How on earth was Jin Young going to explain his bizarre behavior? In a panic, he scrambled to find an excuse. He blurted out that Miss Jo Han-gil once mentioned that looking up at someone from below makes them look ugly, and that girls absolutely despise that angle. Hearing this, Sun Woo let out a soft smile and asked him point blank, "So do I look ugly to you?" This threw Jin Young into an absolute panic. His brain short-circuited, and before he could stop himself, his innermost thoughts slipped right out of his mouth. "Actually, you still look really pretty even from down here." The moment those words left his mouth, the air went dead silent. Jin Young desperately wanted to slap himself. What in the world was he babbling about? But when he looked at Sun Woo's expression, there wasn't a trace of her previous confusion. Instead, she had the smug, satisfied look of someone whose plan had worked flawlessly.
There was another classmate with Sun Woo, a regular stone statue, who was curiously asking who Jin Young was. Jin Young prepared to stick to the plan.
Sure enough, Jin Young had fallen headfirst into another one of Sun Woo's clever traps. Watching from the sidelines, Jason could only shake his head, muttering that the kid had practically walked right into her web. Seriously, that line was so cheesy, it's almost unbearable. Regret washed over Jin Young like a tidal wave. He screamed internally, desperately pleading for backup. "Jason, help me. What do I do now?" But Jason wasn't about to bail him out. He simply replied, "You're on your own, pal. I am not cleaning up this mess." Jin Young sank into absolute despair. He wanted to take his words back, but he knew trying to explain would only make him look guiltier. All he could do was sit there stewing in his own frustration, cursing his loose tongue. But little did he know Sun Woo was absolutely thrilled inside. She just quietly stared at him without saying a word, her eyes twinkling with amusement. It looked like Jin Young was truly trapped this time. Being surprisingly gracious, Sun Woo gladly accepted the compliment. She even teased him, asking if he was just saying that to make her happy. This left Jin Young completely tongue-tied, unable to do anything but stammer. He was still feeling incredibly anxious, wondering to himself, is that horribly awkward moment really just behind us now?
And treat her like any other lifeless stone statue. But of course, Sun Woo completely threw him a curveball, introducing him to her classmate right then and there.
Sun Woo smiled and said, "Well, who doesn't love hearing nice things?" And all Jin Young could do was nod along in agreement. Jin Young was just hoping they dropped the subject, but Sun Woo suddenly shifted gears, mentioning how he always hears other girls calling him handsome and sexy too. Hearing that, Jin Young nearly jumped out of his skin and frantically shook his head in denial. He stammered that he wasn't that kind of guy at all, but Sun Woo suddenly leaned in close and whispered, "Really?" Then, delivering the final blow, Sun Woo added that he actually thinks those girls are right. This time, Jin Young completely froze. He never in a million years expected Sun Woo to say something like that. Blushing, he quickly blurted out, "Really? I mean, in what way?" Sun Woo just smiled teasingly, keeping him in suspense. "Well," he said, "I've actually noticed it for a while now." He pointed out that while Jin Young usually looks all quiet and polite once he takes off that jacket, He's definitely hiding some serious muscle. As Sunwoo spoke, he edged even closer, his voice dripping with pure tease.
She casually announced, "This is the guy who called me pretty yesterday." The moment she said that, the stone classmate next to her absolutely lost it.
He whispered that Jin Yong is actually attractive in a lot of ways. By now, they were so close that Jin Yong was completely backed into a corner. With absolutely nowhere to run, Jin Yong was entirely at Sunwoo's mercy. Sunwoo's little game of hard to get had worked perfectly. Jin Yong was so flustered, he couldn't even speak. The look in Sunwoo's eyes made it crystal clear he had Jin Yong wrapped right around his finger. Just as the tension reached its peak, a classmate suddenly popped out of nowhere, shouting that the second half of the game was about to start. That shout instantly burst Jin Yong's romantic bubble. He quickly called back and scrambled to get back onto the field. Sitting on the bleachers, Sunwoo watched him run off, then suddenly called out at the top of his lungs, "Hey, Jin Yong! Don't come back without a win." That shout echoed across the entire field for everyone to hear. Standing right in the middle of the pitch, Jin Yong was still completely dazed. Back on the field, Jin Yong couldn't help but wonder. He'd been playing so half-heartedly in the first half, so why was he suddenly bursting with energy now? The moment the ball touched his feet, he felt as light as a feather.
Sunwoo even put on an innocent act to stir the pot, adding, "I was so startled at the time too," looking at her.
The opposing players tried to crowd and block him, but they couldn't even touch him. His sudden shift in energy was mind-blowing. Even Jin Young himself couldn't figure out what had gotten into him. Jason, however, saw right through it, but chose to keep quiet. With a knowing grin, he teased, "Come on, you know the answer better than anyone. What else could it possibly be? It's because Sunwoo is sitting right over there watching you." Watching Jin Yong fly across the field, Jason figured this must be what they call running on the power of love. He couldn't help but sigh. Even though he'd told Jin Yong to play it cool earlier, seeing him now. This kind of love-fueled motivation didn't seem like a bad thing after all. And just as the thought crossed his mind, the ball curved beautifully through the air and sliced straight into the top corner of the net. Gui Myung lunged for it with everything he had, but he couldn't even graze it. Goal. The entire field erupted in cheers, and his classmates swarmed Jin Young, shouting at the top of their lungs, crowning him the MVP of the day. Jin Young was absolutely thrilled. All his previous frustration washed away in an instant, and his smile was brighter than ever.
Thoroughly enjoying the chaos she was causing, Jin Young felt like he was being roasted alive. Her move was absolutely ruthless.
It looked like playing for love really paid off. Meanwhile, Gui Myung was absolutely devastated. He kept muttering under his breath about how he'd never forgive Jin Young. After all, getting humiliated like that in front of the whole school was a grudge he wasn't going to let go of anytime soon. On the sidelines, Sunwoo was absolutely thrilled. Watching Jin Young dominate the field, his heart felt sweeter than honey. It really was a spectacular goal, and even the weather seemed to be on their side. The energy across the entire campus instantly reached a fever pitch. But before the two of them could celebrate for too long, they caught the attention of Mr. Cho, who was walking by. Looking at the two of them sitting on the bleachers, Mr. Cho couldn't help but chuckle to himself. These two really didn't care about hiding their feelings at all, did they? Just look at how happy the kid was. Later, Jin Young was just about to head out of his house when he heard shouting from inside. It turned out his parents were bickering over a trip. The tickets were already bought, but his dad suddenly had to work overtime, which his mom was definitely not happy about. Seeing Jin Young walk into the room, they quieted down a bit. His mom quickly turned to him and asked, "Are you heading back to school now?" Jin Young originally wanted to just grab a quick bite and leave after all. Sitting down to eat with his dad,
She struck a cute, dramatic pose, asking him if she looked just as pretty today. This wasn't a friendly greeting at all.
always made him feel incredibly awkward. But his stomach was growling loudly, and right on cue, Jason popped into his head again, advising him to just sit down and have a proper meal. After all, you can't run on an empty stomach. His mom, however, had a brilliant idea. Since his dad was too busy with work, she decided to give Jin Young the theater tickets their neighbor had gifted them, telling him to take a friend over the weekend. This put Jin Young in a tough spot. Who was he supposed to bring with 2 tickets? But when he reached out to his close friends, they turned out to be completely useless. One claimed he wasn't feeling well, and another was buried in club activities. Even Gui Myung turned him down flat, saying he had absolutely zero interest in plays. Now this was getting really awkward. Are these tickets really going to waste? Jin Young is in such an awkward spot now. He originally figured someone with Gui Min's build would definitely prefer staying cooped up at home watching anime. But the guy didn't buy it at all. Gui Min just looked totally baffled, and said he never watches that kind of stuff. Then he turned right around and headed straight for the snack bar, leaving Jin Young all alone to reflect on his life choices. Stereotypes really are the worst, huh? Why did he just assume the guy was a total shut-in? Just as he was agonizing over this,
This was a straight-up public execution, with the other classmate cheering them on. Jin Young was left completely speechless.
Jason popped up again to rub salt in the wound. He was like, well, your backup list is completely wiped out. What are you going to do now? Jin Young was still putting on a show of worrying, wondering who on earth he should invite. But Jason wasn't buying his act for a second and told him to just spit it out. Deep down, you've already got someone in mind, don't you? Once those words were out, Jin Young was completely speechless. Talk about hitting the nail right on the head. You actually want to ask Seon Woo, don't you? You used to be scared to death of her, but look at you now. Your head is completely filled with that girl Jin Young was still desperately bickering with. Jason stubbornly refusing to admit he wanted to ask Seon Woo. Jason wasn't about to baby him and told him to just make a decision already. But then, the guy was so busy arguing with the little devil on his shoulder that he didn't even notice someone standing right behind him. It was Mr. Han Gyul. He just stood there quietly watching the whole show. Finally, unable to take any more of it, he called out his name. This scared Jin Young half to death. Mr. Han Gyul crossed his arms and asked why he didn't even say hello to his teacher.
If he couldn't handle her, he could at least run away, right?
Jin Young quickly apologized, stammering out that he really didn't see him standing there. Mr. Han Gyul remained totally calm, saying, well, you certainly seem to be having a lively conversation with yourself. Then, out of the blue, he asked, you're not one of those people who makes up imaginary friends and actually talks to them, are you? Jin Young was completely dumbfounded. Does this teacher have a third eye or something? How on earth did he hit the nail so perfectly on the head? The two sat down on a bench and Mr. Han Gyul got straight to the point. So, is there a girl you want to take to the play with you? Jin Young couldn't deny it anymore, so he had to honestly admit that yes, that was the case. Mr. Han Gyul then sighed. That girl Seon Woo really is quite popular, isn't she? Jin Young subconsciously nodded along in agreement. But the second the words left his mouth, he froze. Wait a minute, I didn't even say her name. How did he know I wanted to ask Seon Woo? Jin Young was completely stunned. How on earth did the teacher know the person he wanted to invite was Seon Woo? Mr. Han Gyul wore a mischievous smirk. I heard you two getting all lovey-dovey yesterday, clear as day.
Desperate to avoid getting hurt again, Jin Young actually started brainwashing himself, repeating the mantra every day that girls are just stones. Without a single word, he took off running faster than he ever had in his entire life. Watching him bolt.
Saying stuff like, you look really pretty today. Man, it was so cheesy I cringed. Jin Young was so embarrassed he wanted to vanish on the spot. Mr. Han Gyul saw right through him. You're just terrified of getting rejected, aren't you? Jin Young hung his head and admitted it. After all, asking out a girl like Seon Woo in public, how was that any different from a direct confession? Mr. Han Gyul scoffed, calling him a spineless coward. With that, he got up to leave, but not before leaving behind a cryptic remark. You'll thank me later. Jin Young hadn't even processed what that meant yet when he looked up and saw Seon Woo standing just a short distance away. Talk about a brutal wingman move. Mr. Han Gyul called out to Seon Woo directly. He shouted, hey, Seon Woo, Jin Young has something really important to tell you. I'll let him say it himself. Jin Young was completely dumbstruck. He never imagined his teacher would pull a stunt like this. Mr. Han Gyul just laid all his cards on the table and told Seon Woo, Jin Young wants to take you to a play this weekend. This was basically a public execution. Kyungdo couldn't help but burst out laughing, teasing that Jin Young was such a coward for needing a teacher to pass his messages.
Even Jason couldn't help but praise his quick thinking. If he had stayed there any longer, who knows how else that girl would have messed with him.
Mr. Han Gyul, cool as a cucumber, just waved for Seon Woo to come over. Now Jin Young couldn't run away even if he wanted to. Seon Woo smiled, greeted him, and slowly walked over. Jin Young's mind was in a complete mess right now. Didn't what the teacher just said basically amount to confessing on his behalf? Before he could figure out how to explain, Seon Woo was already standing right in front of him. She asked if he was going to a play this weekend. Then tilting her head with a smile, she asked, in that case, do you want to take me with you? This plot twist came way too fast. Jin Young froze completely. Was this the teacher's wingman skills working their magic? Or had Seon Woo been waiting for this exact moment all along? Jin Young's mind must have gone totally blank. Faced with her stepping up like this, he actually just went with the flow and agreed. And just like that, the weekend arrived. Jin Young put on a crisp blue shirt and waited at the meeting spot way ahead of time. But inside his heart was still doing flips. Jason sat on his shoulder, switching right into roast mode. You didn't even think, did you? You just blurted out yes because she asked.
As he ran, Jin Young tried to brainwash himself. Do not waver. That girl's smile is bad news. She's up to no good.
You've really got to fix that habit of just going with the flow. This time, Jin Young didn't argue back. He also felt he had been way too impulsive. He even started to wonder if Mr. Hang Gyo had set a trap for him on purpose. But thinking about that now was completely pointless. What worried him even more was his appearance. He had specially taken off his glasses and put on contacts, but he couldn't help but feel that something was off. Jason was nice enough to hype him up, complimenting him on how incredibly handsome he looked today. But before Ki-young could even bask in it for 2 seconds, Jason's tone suddenly turned serious. Staring at Ki-young, he asked, "What kind of relationship are you actually trying to build with Seong-woo?" This question completely stumped Ki-young. Jason crossed his arms, his tone leaving no room for doubt. He said, "You need to make a decision right now. Anyone with eyes can see you definitely have feelings for her." Jason's words left Ki-young completely speechless. Since he had already asked her out, Seong-woo must have noticed something too. An ordinary person might not think much of it, but Ki-young was different. To his very core, he was absolutely terrified of rejection. Terrified to death. Jason warned him that if he just rushed in blindly like this,
She's just messing with me. As long as I run fast enough, the embarrassment can't catch up to me.
the humiliating scenes of being rejected in his dreams might actually happen in real life. But if he wanted to avoid getting hurt, there was actually a way. And that was to pull back his feelings right now. As long as he didn't fall for her, he would never lose. Ki-young was completely stunned. Was love really something you could just switch off like a faucet? But then Jason suddenly threw a curveball. Didn't you do exactly that before? Just treat Seong-woo like a rock. If he didn't view her as a human being, he wouldn't get nervous at all. Jason was just about to explain how to pull it off. But before he could finish his sentence, the girl herself showed up. Seong-woo walked over with a smile and asked Ki-young, "Did you dress up on purpose today?" Hearing this, Ki-young was completely starstruck. Her outfit today was practically designed to stop his heart. An off-the-shoulder white top paired with a black miniskirt. She didn't look like his regular classmate in a school uniform at all. She was a goddess, stepped right out of a painting. All of Jason's so-called tactics instantly turned into total nonsense at this very moment. Treating her like a rock, in front of a Seong-woo like this. Who on earth could possibly treat her like a rock?
He kept warning himself as he fled, telling himself not to get any funny ideas about her. She was pure trouble.
Actually, this kind of thing is pretty common. Summoning the courage to confess, only to be ruthlessly rejected by the other person. At times like this, Jason's advice comes in handy. Just treat all girls like rocks. After all, when guys and girls spend time together, it's natural to want to get closer. But once those thoughts take root, trouble is sure to follow. If you just see them all as rocks, you can nip that impulse in the bud. Ki-young looked at the girls in the hallway. In his eyes now, they were nothing but a bunch of rocks with legs. Yes, only like this did he feel safe. This feeling did make him feel a lot lighter. In the end, it all stemmed from his childhood trauma, that feeling of desperately reaching for something, but never being able to grasp it. It made him deeply terrified of being pushed away. But who would have thought that in order to overcome this psychological barrier, things would take such a bizarre turn? The scene shifts, and the streets outside are quite lively. Seong-woo teased with a smile Ki-young, "I can't believe you're drinking espresso. You suddenly seem so mature." Ki-young gave an awkward reply. In reality, he was thinking, this thing was the cheapest item on the menu.
Meanwhile, Sinwoo watched him run away looking completely baffled. What on earth was this guy's problem?
That was the only reason he forced himself to order a cup. As they sat in the cafe, Seong-woo checked her watch. There was still 1 hour left before the play started. This was her very first time seeing a play, and her voice was filled with excitement she couldn't hide. Ki-young could only offer a polite smile, but his mind was racing with Jason's advice. As long as he treated Seong-woo like a rock, he could completely cut off his feelings. He wouldn't have to face the rejection from his dreams. But if he wanted to take things a step further with her, he would have to face his past trauma. To him, that was even more painful than choking down this bitter coffee. On one side was a safe escape, and on the other, an unknown challenge. This time, Ki-young was truly stuck between a rock and a hard place. Ki-young's mind was a complete mess. Could trauma like this really be overcome just by wishing it away? After all, to protect himself over the years, he had grown accustomed to viewing all girls as rocks. How could a defense mechanism like that just be turned off at a moment's notice? Tilting her head, Seon-woo asked Ki-young, "What's on your mind?" Startled, Ki-young quickly used the cup of coffee in his hand as a cover, saying the espresso was just too bitter.
Jin-young made a solemn vow to himself. From this moment on, he would absolutely not get involved with her ever again.
But Seon-woo wasn't that easy to fool. She smiled and called him out. "Liar, you're clearly thinking about something else." She teased him on purpose. "I'm sitting right in front of you, yet your mind is wandering." Ki-young had no choice but to apologize. He really didn't know what else to say. Seon-woo then wondered out loud, "If you're so afraid of the bitterness, why didn't you order a chocolate latte? Why did you have to order something so incredibly bitter?" Seon-woo looked down and suddenly blurted out, "2 hours." This completely random comment instantly left Ki-young utterly dazed, her words reducing him to complete silence. It turned out that just for this date, he spent a whole 2 hours fussing over his makeup and picking out the perfect outfit. Jung Seon-woo stared into his eyes, his voice carrying a hint of possessive authority. "Since I went to all this trouble, can't you just keep your eyes on me?" Ki-young was completely speechless. Jung Seon-woo had put so much effort into this date, yet he was just standing here completely distracted. But reality is never that easy. In a world where the streets are filled with gray stone statues, Sun-woo stood out like she had her own personal spotlight. It really was pretty inexcusable. Fortunately, Seon-woo didn't plan on staying angry. He stood up and said, "But since you're treating me to a play, I'll let you off the hook this time." Ki-young quickly nodded in relief. Just then, Seon-woo spoke up, saying it was time to head in. "Let's go." Ki-young quickly stood up and followed. Since he couldn't make sense of things right now, he decided to put his worries aside for now and focus entirely on making this a great day for Seon-woo. As for what to do about the future, he'd make those decisions after the play. Cut to the theater, where the two of them were already settled in their seats. On stage, the play was reaching its climax, and the actress was pouring her heart out, crying, "Oh, Romeo, why must your name be Romeo?" But the comeback line almost made the audience spit out their drinks. With a completely straight face, the actor replied, "Because my mom gave me this name unfazed." The actress didn't even break character. Instead, she looked up with pure adoration and praised him, saying, "Wow, I didn't even know that. You're so smart, Romeo." The play was so incredibly ridiculous that Seon-woo ended up falling fast asleep right in his seat. Ki-young was also incredibly bored. He could spot her from a mile away. And Sun-woo, being her usual friendly self, immediately waved and greeted him the moment she saw him. The first stop of their date was a total train wreck. Luckily, things went a bit smoother after that. Seon-woo spotted a plushie in a claw machine, and Ki-young confidently beat his chest, promising to win it for him. But after blowing 20,000 won, he didn't even get close. But his spectacular failure actually ended up cracking Seon-woo up. Later at the karaoke room, Ki-young completely let loose. The moment he opened his mouth, Seon-woo couldn't stop laughing. He might not have been a great singer, but he definitely brought the energy. They chatted over dessert, and Seon-woo even thoughtfully cut the cake for him. By the end of the day, Ki-young realized his nerves had completely melted away. As the sky began to grow dark and they walked home together, Seon-woo suddenly brought up Soo-kyung, asking, "You're pretty close with her, aren't you?" Why did that sound a little jealous? After a long, eventful day, night had finally fallen. Seon-woo let out a long sigh, commenting on what a great day it had been. Before they knew it, they were back at his door. Seon-woo smiled warmly. "Thanks for walking me home." But Jin-young's reflexes were incredibly sharp. Before she could even finish her sentence, he whipped around and bolted. "And get home safe, Ki-young." But just as he was about to turn around, he noticed Ki-young was still standing in the exact same spot. Seon-woo tilted his head. "Is there something you want to tell me?" "Ki-young, you've been hesitating this whole time." Ki-young panicked a little. He clearly had something on his mind, but with Seon-woo looking right at him, the words caught in his throat. After struggling for a long moment, all he managed to squeeze out was, "I really had a great time today." He hesitated, secretly wishing he could say, "I hope we can hang out like this more often, just the two of us. And you'd better say yes the next time I ask you out." But Seon-woo didn't say anything for a long moment. The silence made Ki-young's stomach turn, making him terrified that he had said too much. Desperate to break the awkward silence, he laughed it off and tried to brush it aside. Scratching his head, Ki-young stammered, "Anyway, see you at school." Wu finally snapped out of it and burst out laughing. All that build-up, and that was what he came up with. He playfully nudged Ki-young, teasing him for being such a blockhead and making him get all nervous for nothing. As he watched Wu wave goodbye, Ki-young stood frozen for a long time. Even though the date had been a complete roller coaster.
He kept practicing this for years, and by the time he reached middle school, he had actually mastered the trick.
He didn't even give her a backward glance, leaving Wu standing there with her hand frozen in midair, completely dumbfounded. At least he managed to get those last words out. But as Wu walked away, Ki-young felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. Even though he had spoken up, he still couldn't get over his own mental hurdle. There was so much he truly wanted to tell Wu, but the mere thought of rejection made his head spin. This constant, nerve-wracking anxiety made him feel that keeping things as they were was much safer. Besides, this date hadn't even been his idea to begin with. Their teacher, Jo Han-gyo, had been pulling the strings from behind the scenes, forcing them together. The more Ki-young thought about it, the more insecure he felt. What if Wu had only agreed to go out because he felt pressured? If that were true, wouldn't everything Ki-young just said feel like an unwanted burden? Watching Wu walk away, Ki-young's confidence completely crumbled, and he began to pull back. He wondered if he practiced enough, just like he did 5 years ago, could he eventually view Wu as nothing more than a stone? If he could just view him as an emotionless rock, his heart wouldn't be in such a chaotic mess. After all, before they took things any further, this was probably the best way to protect himself. But just as he was about to make up his mind, her greeting was still on the tip of her tongue. By now, Jin-young's only strategy was simple. The very instant their eyes met, Wu suddenly spun around and called out, "Ki-young, next time we meet, stop ordering that insanely bitter espresso." That one line completely shattered the defense Jin-young had just built up in his head. It turned out she was already looking forward to their next date. Before leaving, Wu casually added, "Next time, let's get chocolate lattes instead," ordering a drink. No way, she was clearly asking him out again. Jin-young stood there completely frozen in his tracks. Jason spoke up, hitting him right where it hurt. "Are you really going to treat such an amazing girl like a cold, lifeless rock?" Jason was actually pretty chill about it, saying he'd respect whatever choice Jin-young made in the end. After all, if he was really that terrified, running away was always an option. It's not like he didn't do the exact same thing 5 years ago. Hearing that made Jin-young feel even worse. He hung his head and asked Jason, "What do you think I look like right now?" Jason's words completely ripped away Jin-young's last shred of dignity, as he literally counted down all his embarrassing moments on his fingers. He pointed out that Jin-young couldn't even ask her out on a date without getting someone else to help. He would immediately launch into a 100-meter sprint. Even if he just bumped into her at a hallway corner, he'd react as if he'd seen a ghost. First, he zoned out right in front of Wu and got caught red-handed. And then what happened at dinner was even more ridiculous. He actually let her cut his pork cutlet for him. And when the date was finally coming to an end, even though he wanted to so badly, he wimped out and didn't even dare to bring up a next date. Jason got more and more fired up, mocking Jin-young for playing the coward just because he was too scared of getting close. He even wanted to treat Wu like a literal rock. Seeing Jin-young's completely defeated look, Jason shrugged. With a totally innocent face, he said, "Hey, I'm not trying to humiliate you. I'm just stating the facts." But honestly, Jin-young's behavior was so painful to watch that even Jason couldn't help but sigh at how pathetic it was. After getting roasted like that, Jin-young finally snapped out of it, realizing that his cowardly behavior earlier really was embarrassing. If he didn't want to be a coward anymore, he needed to step up. He reached right out and grabbed Wu's hand. That completely caught Wu off guard. Jin-young stopped her, saying, "Wu, I'm so sorry I made you fall fast asleep during the play earlier," vanishing in the blink of an eye. He left Wu standing there staring blankly. Jin-young's bizarre behavior. "It must have been because the one I picked was so boring. Next time I'll definitely take you to see something way more exciting. Let me make it up to you." Jin-young's sudden direct approach caught Wu completely off guard. She probably never expected this absolute blockhead to actually have a breakthrough one day. But instead of getting mad, she burst out laughing. It seemed like all the previous awkwardness had instantly melted away with that one sentence. Wu smiled and said, "I was wondering when you were finally going to say that." As it turned out, she had been waiting for him to make the first move all along. This was great. Now their relationship was finally about to take a huge step forward. But Jin-young, who had been so brave just a second ago, suddenly realized what he'd said. He quickly let go of her hand and started apologizing like crazy. Seonwoo didn't mind at all. In fact, she happily locked in their next date. She even teased him to find something more exciting next time. As he watched Seonwoo walk away, Jin Young's heart just wouldn't calm down. It looked like he was going to be wide awake all night. Little did he know Seonwoo was absolutely thrilled too. That hand-holding moment made it seem like he treated her like the plague. Whenever they crossed paths, he fled faster than a startled rabbit. Had pretty much locked in their relationship. The night flew by, and before they knew it, the next morning had arrived. Right now, Jin Young was pushing himself to the limit on the track. Whenever he couldn't make up his mind, this was his go-to way to clear his head. After all, he had just promised Seonwoo they'd see each other again. To him, this wasn't just a simple hangout. It meant he had to overcome his own deep-seated insecurities and actually make a move to get closer to Seonwoo. Even Jason thought he was finally acting like a real man this time. But that was easier said than done. What excuse could he possibly use to get close to her? Jin Young was burning through all his brain cells trying to think. But before he could figure anything out, Soo-jong appeared behind him out of nowhere like a ghost. Jin Young was right in the middle of his workout when a voice suddenly popped up behind him, nearly scaring the soul right out of him. He yelled at the top of his lungs, "Who the hell are you?" She giggled and introduced herself. "It's me, Soo-jong." What a coincidence, Jin Young. Imagine bumping into you here. Standing there with her hand still half raised, Sunwoo was utterly bewildered. Jin Young stood there blankly for a second before finally placing the name. Ah, right, she was Seonwoo's best friend. Still looking at her outfit, something felt a bit off. Soo-jong had no intention of making small talk, pointing straight at the pull-up bar instead. She said, "Show me that pull-up you were just doing." Though Jin Young was totally confused, he still did exactly as he was told. But the moment he got into position, Soo-jong looked utterly horrified. This wasn't a workout, it was straight-up self-torture. Soo-jong couldn't watch a second longer. Without saying a word, she delivered a flying kick, leaving Jin Young in a world of pain. With that single kick, Jin Young rolled across the ground like a tumbleweed. It hurt so bad he couldn't even stand up for a solid minute. He groaned, asking Soo-jong what her problem was. But she just stood there, totally chill, and told him that if he kept practicing like a headless chicken, he'd end up breaking his own body sooner or later. Then she casually told him to wait right there while she headed back to change her clothes. Jin Young, still totally clueless, actually tried to finish the rest of his workout. But Soo-jong let out a sharp yell that immediately shut him down. Had never met a guy who avoided her like this in her entire life. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the final bell rang. Left with no choice, he had to stay put. But as he was standing there, utterly confused, Jason suddenly spoke up. He told Jin Young that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Before Jin Young could even process that, Jason nudged him again, reminding him that to win a battle, you need to know your opponent inside and out. He said if Jin Young could just get Soo-jong talking, then all the intel on Sunwoo would be served to him on a silver platter. Jason kept analyzing, pointing out that before, Jin Young had only asked Wee Min for info to keep himself from overthinking. But this time was different. The goal now was to take the initiative and get way closer to Sunwoo. It finally clicked for Jin Young. "Oh, so you're saying I should find a chance to get some inside scoop out of Soo-jong later?" Jason nodded, assuring him this was a solid plan and way better than relying on Wee Min. Sure enough, a short while later, Soo-jong came back in her fresh clothes. But Jin Young just stared and stared, completely failing to notice any difference. Soo-jong rolled her eyes so hard they almost got stuck. She snapped that she'd changed both her pants and her shoes, telling him his eyesight was so pathetic he might as well be blind. Jin Young let out a massive sigh of relief. Even though a whole day of evasion had left him completely exhausted, at least he had made it through in one piece. But Jin Young didn't care. He bluntly fired back, telling her that to him, she was no different from a random rock on the side of the road. That got her so riled up, she almost took him out right then and there. Annoyed, Soo-jong dragged him over to the pull-up bar, demanding to see just how terrible his form really was. As Jin Young walked over, he started plotting. Sensing the timing was right, he casually poked around, "Hey Soo-jong, you and Sunwoo are pretty close, aren't you?" Soo-jong was sharp as a tack. She saw right through his little game in a heartbeat and asked point blank if he had a crush on Sunwoo. Jin Young completely lost his cool. He started stammering, desperately trying to play it off as just a random, innocent question. But Soo-jong wasn't buying it. She told him his act was so obvious even a passing chicken could see right through him. And believe it or not, there actually was a chicken nearby, nodding in perfect agreement. This park was getting weirder by the second. But jokes aside, Soo-jung's next words hit him like a ton of bricks. She warned him that trying to win Sunwoo's heart was on a literal hell mode difficulty level. Jin-young was genuinely puzzled. He asked if it was because she had way too many guys chasing after her. Jason tried to comfort him, telling him he did a great job today. But Jin-young couldn't bring himself to smile. But Soo-jung shook her head, explaining that Sunwoo was actually a massive mystery. Sure, she got along with everyone at school and seemed super easygoing. But that friendly, people-pleasing vibe actually made it impossible to read her. No one knew what she was really thinking deep down. Soo-jung sighed, admitting that even though they'd been friends forever, she still couldn't figure her out. They had tons of fun goofing around, but the second anything personal came up, Sunwoo would instantly lock up like an encrypted file, not uttering a single word. Soo-jung was convinced she was harboring some serious secrets. Even as her absolute best friend, she felt she had to warn Jin-young. If he wanted to win her over, he was in for a massive uphill battle. Jin-young was completely thrown off. He recalled Gwi-min telling him something very similar. Could Sunwoo really have a side to her that nobody else knew about? But before he could wrap his head around it, Soo-jung was already nagging him to get back on the pull-up bar. Seeing him stall and drag his feet, she kicked him right off his feet. Jin-young let out a loud groan, demanding to know why she was so obsessed with making him do this. When on earth is this nightmare going to end? He grumbled, asking if she was even any good at sports herself. Looking at her petite frame, Jin-young felt pretty skeptical, assuming she was just talking big. But Soo-jung's expression suddenly shifted as she smirked, saying she actually had absolute confidence in her physical abilities. As she slipped off her jacket, Jin-young's jaw hit the floor. Soo-jung even gave him a playful wink, teasingly telling him not to go falling in love with her. Just like that, Jin-young froze up completely, unable to utter a single word. Who would have guessed that the usually laid-back Soo-jung was hiding a side like this? So how on earth was Jin-young supposed to respond to this? He couldn't help but let out a genuine compliment, admitting she was actually in incredible shape. Hearing that, Soo-jung's ego immediately went through the roof. She was absolutely beaming with pride. Meanwhile, Sunwoo had also changed into her casual clothes, pulling the brim of her cap down low, as she walked alone along the quiet campus path, clutching a bag in her hand.
In his eyes, the streets were filled with walking stone statues. But back to the present, suddenly, someone calls out his name from behind.
As he walked home, he realized he needed to come up with a much better plan for tomorrow. He couldn't keep letting her put him on the defensive like this. Suddenly, she stopped dead in her tracks, as if a sudden realization had just hit her, and began to mumble softly to herself. But honestly, this is far from over. Looking at Seon-woo's getup, it's pretty obvious she's trying to keep a low profile. But of course she has the worst luck and bumps right into some classmates gossiping on the street. If she gets spotted like this, she'll never be able to explain herself. Hearing them talk smack about the teacher Seon-woo quickly pulls down her cap, terrified of making eye contact. She just wants to get the heck out of there. After all, the less drama, the better. But before she can get very far, shouting echoes from up ahead. Turns out Soo-jung is putting Kyung-yong through a brutal extra workout, barking out orders like a drill sergeant. She's telling him to watch where he's putting his strength, and Kyung-yong is seriously struggling. Seon-woo just watches the whole painful scene from a distance. Seon-woo has a front row seat to the madness. Man Soo-jung is a ruthless coach. Kyung-yong is practically begging for mercy, but she still forces him to squeeze out 3 more reps. Watching these two go at it, Seon-woo probably feels a bit uneasy, and then Soo-jung loses her patience. Annoyed by how slow Kyung-yong is moving, she kicks him right out of the way. But before he even had time to process it, a familiar voice suddenly echoed from right behind him. Since words aren't working, Soo-jung decides to show him how it's done. And the moment she starts demonstrating her form, her technique is absolutely flawless. But who knows if Kyung-yong can actually grasp the essence of it? Watching her take charge like that, Kyung-yong is completely spellbound. Meanwhile, she casually asks, "Is this really that hard?" Kyung-yong feels so incredibly frustrated. It looks easy, sure, but trying to actually do it is absolute torture. Right at that moment, Seon-woo pops out of nowhere and showers Soo-jung with praise. She tells her she looks incredibly cool, which immediately puts a huge smile on Soo-jung's face. Meanwhile, Kyung-yong is left totally bewildered. Like, how does Seon-woo always manage to appear out of thin air? Soo-jung quickly explains that Kyung-yong's form was so terrible. She just couldn't bear to watch and had to step in herself. Seon-woo just chuckles, clearly already used to her fiery personality. But Soo-jung's attention is quickly stolen by the bags Seon-woo is carrying. Sunwoo had actually chased him all the way to the school gate. This was bad. After playing hide-and-seek all day, he still got cornered. What are in all these bags anyway? And wait, is that a chicken on the school playground? Sunwoo actually thinks it's pretty cute, but Kyung-young is completely dazed, having absolutely no idea where this chicken came from. Kyung-young quickly greets her, noting that Seon-woo's current outfit is definitely a far cry from her usual style. Watching the moves Soo-jung just pulled off Seon-woo is genuinely impressed, admitting that just hanging from the bar already makes her feel like she's going to pass out. But Kyung-young, being a total blabbermouth, blurted out that it's probably just because she's anemic. That comment nearly choked Seon-woo on the spot. Scared by her reaction, Kyung-young quickly hangs his head and apologizes. But Soo-jung, being her warm-hearted self, insists on having Seon-woo join the workout, even offering to give her a hand. Since things have gone this far, Sunwoo has no choice but to bite the bullet and give it a shot. Kyung-young is put in charge of counting the reps. Well, this is great. What started as a solo training session has officially turned into a wild three-person workout. With Soo-jung supporting her, Seon-woo finally manages to keep up with the rhythm. But man, this manual labor is no joke. Jin-young almost jumped out of his skin. Sunwoo was so elusive, she kept catching him completely off guard. Even with someone helping, Seon-woo is still feeling the burn. And to make matters worse, that brat Kyung-young completely zones out while counting. His eyes are literally wandering, and he doesn't even try to hide where he's looking. Seon-woo notices it too, and the vibe instantly becomes incredibly awkward. If he keeps staring like that, things are going to get way too uncomfortable. Behind her, Soo-jung is pushing hard, urging Seon-woo to pull herself up with all her might. But Seon-woo has hit her absolute limit. If Soo-jung weren't holding on to her, she probably would have dropped right then and there. Yet Kyung-young just stands there, staring completely spaced out. Being gaped at like that makes Seon-woo feel extremely self-conscious. His gaze is way too intense. She's already completely exhausted, and now this unbearable awkwardness makes it impossible to go on. And just like that, things go completely off the rails. With her energy fully drained, Seon-woo slips and drags Soo-jung down right with her. Kyung-young's reaction is just gold. Staring at the two girls tangled in a heap on the ground, he actually asks, "What are you guys doing?" Kyung-young really doesn't know when to shut up, insisting that this only happened because Seon-woo is so anemic. He was beyond frustrated. Why did he have to run into this girl everywhere he went? Before he could come up with a solid plan, furious Seon-woo immediately snaps back, telling him that's not it at all. Seon-woo quickly apologizes to Soo-jung. After all, the girl came to help only to end up getting crushed under her. At this point, Soo-jung is absolutely fuming. One zones out during the workout, and the other loses track of counting. This isn't a training session. It's straight-up torture. Soo-jung is completely about to explode. Grinding her teeth, she glares at the two of them and declares she's going to finish them both off. Who would have thought Soo-jung had such insane explosive power? She lifts Seon-woo clean over her head. Now the training session has turned into a total one-sided beatdown. Seon-woo's begs for mercy echoed across the entire schoolyard. Looks like she really learned her lesson this time. Before they knew it, the sky was already getting dark. Having barely survived Soo-jung's brutal training session, the two dragged themselves home completely exhausted. Jin-young couldn't help but sigh. Man, today was absolutely exhausting, don't you think, Sunwoo? But Sunwoo just stared at him, totally speechless. I was literally used as a human barbell the entire time. What kind of training was that even supposed to be? He just wanted to get as far away from her as possible. But Sunwoo had absolutely no intention of letting him off the hook, freezing him right in his tracks with a single sentence. Sunwoo teased with a grin. Hey, maybe we should train with Soo-jung more often. Jin-young really had to stop and think about that one. After all, today's intensity was way too much for any normal person. He had originally wanted to size up her strength, but ended up getting worn out the entire day. He hadn't figured out a single thing about Sunwoo. But on second thought, they did have a pretty good time training together. And wasn't that enough? Jason chimed in, saying they shouldn't rush things and should just stick to the plan. Just then, they reached a fork in the road. Jin-young waved goodbye and said he'd see her at school tomorrow. But Sunwoo suddenly froze. She looked like she wanted to say something, but was holding back. Sensing this, Jin-young quickly asked if there was something else on her mind. After hesitating for what felt like forever, Sunwoo finally spoke up, saying it wasn't really a big deal. Still, what could possibly make her this conflicted? Jin-young stood there totally clueless, just waiting for her to finish her sentence. Sunwoo hesitated for a moment, then out of nowhere she blurted out, Hey, Jin Yong, do you prefer girls who are good at sports? Talk about a loaded question. Jin Yong was caught completely off guard and could only stammer in response. Are you trying to run away again? Well, I mean, being healthy is definitely a good thing, right? But why are you suddenly asking that? Hearing his response, Sunwoo fell completely silent. The atmosphere instantly turned incredibly awkward. Who would have thought that someone as loud and carefree as her would actually make a face like that just because of an answer? Sunwoo gave a quiet, thoughtful nod. She mumbled that she was just asking out of curiosity, waved goodbye, and quickly hurried off. Watching her walk away, Jin Young was still scratching his head, wondering what that weird vibe was all about. But in his mind, Jason let out a massive sigh, completely exasperated by how clueless Jin Young was. Shaking his head in disappointment, Jason said, "Look, I might not be an expert on girls, but even I can tell that you just gave the absolute wrong answer." Jin Young was even more confused now and quickly demanded to know what he did wrong. But Jason had no intention of giving him an easy answer, telling him to just go home and figure it out on his own. That night, the sky was unusually dark. Sujung had snuck up to the school rooftop all by herself, hoping to get some fresh air. Sunwoo was straight up calling him out. He hadn't given her an answer, and the moment they crossed paths, he'd turn around and vanish into thin air. After all, the view up there was great. By then, it was already 9 p.m., and aside from a few teachers on duty, the school should have been completely empty. But right at that moment, the sound of a piano suddenly echoed in her ears. Who would be playing the piano on the rooftop in the middle of the night? Sujung followed the sound, but the more she listened, the more unsettled she felt. The melody was beautiful, almost too beautiful, sending a cold shiver down her spine. But then the scene shifts, revealing that Sujung was actually just telling a ghost story to her friends. Jin Young looked completely unimpressed. Isn't that just a basic school legend? Why are you making it sound like some horror movie? Sunwoo joined in on the teasing too. She admitted the story did sound pretty creepy. But surprisingly, the one who was actually terrified was Jason. He curled himself into a ball, whining that he absolutely couldn't stand scary stories. Meanwhile, Sujung was still genuinely wondering who could have played so beautifully. She couldn't believe there was such a talented pianist hiding in their school. Hearing this, Gumyong couldn't sit still anymore and turned to Sujung. "Wait, you seriously haven't heard the rumor?" Looking dead serious, she asked, "Did I do something to offend you? Otherwise, why are you avoiding me like the plague?" "It's about the ghost of the music room. They say a long time ago there was a girl who used to practice there every single night. But then one day she passed away right at her piano. And get this, her cause of death was honestly ridiculous. She actually choked on a piece of candy. But that's not all." Gumyong continued with a deadly serious look on his face. "If the room was completely empty, then what you heard, Sujung, was definitely that girl's ghost playing the piano." Hearing this, Jin Young could only roll his eyes. This made-up story was so ridiculous it was practically insulting his intelligence. But Sunwoo, on the other hand, took it completely seriously. She was so scared that she hid right behind Jin Young. It looked like this cliché ghost story was actually doing timid old Jin Young a huge favor. Looking at Sunwoo cowering behind his back, he thought to himself, "Wow, this girl is such a coward to get this freaked out over a silly ghost story." Just as they were chatting, a voice called out from the end of the hallway. Teacher Jo Hangyo appeared, timing it perfectly. Pushing up her glasses, Jo Hangyo immediately assigned some work to the two of them, telling them to come help out in the office if they weren't busy. Her parting shot, "You're so weird," completely silenced Jin Young. He was officially out of options. Jin Young and Sunwoo had no choice but to obey, following their teacher to the office and leaving Sujung and Gumyong behind. Sujin felt more and more uneasy the more she thought about it. She leaned in and asked Gumyong about that piano ghost story from earlier. Where on earth did he hear that rumor anyway? Gumyong stopped pretending and with a mischievous grin admitted he had made the whole thing up. He just wanted to see those two idiots get scared out of their wits. Watching Gumyong walk away with a smug look on his face, Sujin was completely dumbfounded. That chubby guy is so malicious, he's a total psycho. Meanwhile, the night grew deeper and deeper. The school building was still brightly lit. After finishing some work for Mr. Hangyo, Chin Young and Seon Woo were on their way back. Grading papers late at night was exhausting. Jin Young noticed that Seon Woo seemed a bit off and asked if she was still thinking about that ghost story. Seon Woo was stubborn, though, loudly protesting that ghosts didn't even exist, while being absolutely terrified inside. She kept saying, "What's so scary about a ghost who choked to death on hot soup anyway?" But in reality, she was right on the verge of crying. Jin Young saw right through her bluff. Just as they were bickering,